Welcome back to the Life Outside podcast, where we share stories from outside to hopefully inspire you to get outside as well. My name is Cam Bostock, and on this week's episode, I chat to Ben Plunkett. Ben is an avid outdoor explorer and adventurer with a passion for conservation, unique expeditions, and pushing his limits out in nature. Ben shares stories from hitchhiking 15,000 kilometres around Australia, his wild month-long off-track expedition along the Sydney Basin, and the importance of encouraging more people to head outdoors. We hope you enjoy. How's it going, buddy?
Good, mate.
Very good
mate. It's nice to finally catch up.
Yeah, man. Great to have you onto the show. We're just chatting prior to hitting record. We've been trying to make this happen for actually a couple months now, I think. We've been chatting on Instagram and trying to tee up a time, but we're both very transient and often out in the bush. So it's fairly hard to tee up a chat, but I'm coming to you from Tokyo, Japan right now in some random Airbnb in the city. Where are you coming to me from currently?
I'm on the outskirts of Sydney, which is very uncharacteristic of me. Usually I'm down in Tasmania, currently doing a bit of a road trip. Got a couple of podcasts over the next few days and doing some interviews for a film I've been working on for the last 10 months. So yeah, trying to jam in as much as possible. And this is kind of like the first domino. So yeah, excited and also really nervous.
Yeah, man. Exciting. Yeah, it's probably a bit weird. You're in the middle of the biggest city in Australia. I'm in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world, and we don't often spend too much time in cities. So we'll make the most of it, but I'm sure we'll both be fanging to get out into nature pretty soon. But yeah, no, excited to have you on. Thanks for making the time. Tell us a little bit about Benny. We only sort of connected on Instagram a couple of months ago. All I know about you is that you're super into the outdoors and you are doing a lot of pretty radically crazy and wild adventures that not many other people do. A couple of the things you've talked to me about, I'm like, well, I've never heard of anyone doing that, and you're kind of pioneering these very interesting adventures. Where did it start for you? What got you into the outdoors? And you seem to be pretty addicted to it now. How did that sort of unfold?
Geez, starting with a good question there, Cam. Oh, I guess from the outset, really, my dad was quite into the outdoors. We grew up camping down by the river in Canberra, where I grew up, Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. And yeah, from an early age, there was just a lot of sport, a lot of time building cubby houses, running amok with my brother out in the back streets of Canberra. And as I sort of progressed through my teens, I guess you could say I slowly fell out of love with the outdoors, and I sort of started sinking my energy into partying a bit more. And just looking back on the first sort of 5 years of my 20s, I was like, hold on a second, what did I actually get done in those 5 years? I was juggling a uni degree to be a project manager and just filling my cup by going to festivals. And I sort of had a couple of mental health issues through there, and one thing led to another. And I felt that one thing that really helped me get out of a bit of a dark place was the outdoors. I sort of stopped sitting around waiting for invites and just started going on solo adventures up in the Victorian high country, chasing waterfalls. And I remember I was getting pulled back into the old world, and I had a couple $100 to my name, and I was about to sign up for a festival, and I could feel myself wanting to move back to my hometown and just get back to my partying roots. And all of a sudden, I remember an ultra marathon popped up on an ad on Facebook, and it was the Great Ocean Road Ultra Marathon. And I'm like, geez, I haven't done a bit of running in a while. I probably hadn't run more than a couple Ks straight in a few years at least. And I decided to just book the ticket, and yeah, for the next couple months started training. And I accidentally ran a marathon in preparation. And that was kind of like the whole point of the challenge. Like, can I run a marathon? And I looked down at my watch and I'm like, oh, I've just done it. So it looks like I'm going to have to up the ante for the marathon. And I jacked it up to the 60K ultra.
Wow.
And limped over the line just in time before the cutoff. Like, they were actually like driving up behind me with 10Ks to go, and it was pissing down raining. And they're like, righto, mate, like, do you want to jump in the car with us? Like, you're going to miss the cutoff, a storm's coming. I just was like, how do you guys have the audacity to tell me to get in the car right now. Like, what do you mean? And I just like found another gear and just sort of shuffled my way in and just sort of scraped in and got it done. And yeah, one thing led to another. And I actually lost a bet to my sister's boyfriend. And it meant that I had to run from Bright up in the Victorian high country to Albury. And that was 105 kilometers. Did that in, I don't know, 12 or 13 hours. And from that point on, I realized how much can be gained from really going into the depths, and it's such a good way to get to know yourself. And I think that's something that I'd forgotten and I'd sort of skipped over those early years of my teens.
Mm.
And yeah, like after really sinking into that world, I remember like I started getting a bit of self-worth again. I was like, oh, maybe I'm not a bad person after all. And I started feeling a bit more confident, and then wrote down on a bit of paper what I want in an ideal partner. And that was the first time I'd done something in my life. And 2 months later, she popped up out of thin air, and we just ended up tag teaming adventures for the next couple of years and got into climbing. And I got my canyon guiding quals, became a fully qualified abseil guide, canyoning guide, hiking, surfing, snorkeling, canoeing, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it just opened up my eyes to a whole new world, which I'm sure you know a lot about.
Incredible, dude. That is oh dude, that's just inspiring to hear. I mean, I can sort of relate. I was super into the outdoors just because my parents kind of brought me onto different adventures when I was really young. And then in my teenage years, I got really into video games and just kind of left that all behind. And it wasn't until my 20s where I rediscovered my love for it and realized, similar to what you were saying, that there's kind of so much more to life than sitting behind a computer screen, or in your case, going out to festivals or whatever it is. And nature is just such a powerful, just going into nature is a really powerful tool for your mental health, your self-confidence, and all of these different things. I just love hearing stories like that, and it's super inspiring. Anyone listening who isn't going into nature and maybe is looking for inspiration, just go out there, because man, it can radically change your life. And it sounds like that was definitely true for you, Benny. Very, very cool. That first ultra marathon you did, I think a lot of people listening would be like, 10 kilometers to go, pouring rain, probably hurting quite a bit. There's a car up your ass saying, get off course, you're not going to make it, kind of thing. And they'll probably say, that sounds pretty miserable. I'd rather I'd rather be out at a festival or partying or sitting home at the couch. What is it about being in those situations that in the moment are obviously not insanely enjoyable, and you definitely be more comfortable doing something else? What is it about that kind of situation for you that keeps you kind of coming back and doing these hard things and getting outside and just putting yourself in, crappy situations?
I constantly ask myself that question, especially while I'm out there. And I don't think there's any one single answer. One continuous theme that seems to keep on popping up is the fact that every time I really go into the pain cave, I get to know myself that little bit better. And I just know that, like, if I don't know myself, how are other people really going to get to know me too? So I found the same excuses that I use to get out of work things and family things and the monotony of the day-to-day life, they also pop up when you're out there pushing yourself. And so it seems like this very ego-fueled thing, which in a sense it is, but what you can take and transfer it back to everyday life, for me, that's where the magic is. And it's not all just about going out and getting my adrenaline fix. That's what it was in the early days. And more recently, I've tried to actually go out and do the opposite and really slow down, go out on solo adventures. And that's where I love taking my camera, because it forces you to slow down and look at the tiny little things. Like even just recently, I got a new 90mm macro lens. And instead of covering like 10, 20, 30 Ks in a day, for 3 hours, I was laying down on my belly, filming this one log that had a multitude of insects on it and bugs and spiders. And it really just opened my eyes how much magic there is just in every square meter of patch, let alone in some of these magical places that I find myself in. And I guess for me, I've gotten a lot of inspiration of other people that have gone out there and tested themselves and the stories that they tell and what they can learn and what they can pass on. And there's definitely a little bit of it that I actually want to do the same and go out, experience new things. And if it encourages a couple people to go out and do the same, that really lights me up. And then ultimately, like the big picture thing is getting people outdoors, and then hopefully they're going to take a little bit more responsibility and looking after the place, because newsflash, everyone, the way we're sort of headed and the decline in a lot of our animals and the environment, it doesn't inspire a lot of hope for me. And I think going out and bumping into people that are actually on the ground day in, day out, fighting for the natural world, that's something that I can see myself devoting a lot of time to, because it feels like it's sort of now or never.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, this podcast and everything I do really is really aimed at getting people outside and inspiring people to experience all the benefits that come with that. And I'm of the opinion that the more people that do experience those benefits of nature, the more people that are going to realize how much it needs to be protected and looked after. I do get comments and messages from some people saying, why are you sharing these spots or telling people to go outside and flood the trails and the natural spaces? It's going to ruin it all. One, I think everyone's entitled to these places, and so I'm not trying to gatekeep the outdoors. But two, I think if people experience the benefits that come with spending time out there, they're going to increase their motivation to look after it and protect it, and hopefully spread that message further. There's always bad eggs out there, but what are your thoughts on that, of trying to get more people outdoors, which paradoxically, in a way, potentially poses more danger to our natural spaces, but also, could increase awareness as well?
Again, that's an awesome question. And I think about this quite a lot. I've kind of ebbed and flowed between wanting to get as many people outdoors as possible and then locking places up so that we can protect them. I feel like we have these really accessible spots close to cities, close to towns. And I think it's crucial that we have them open for your everyday punter to be able to go out on half day and day trips. And I see them as a pawn in this game of chess we call life, where if it means that we have to sacrifice these like one little piece of the puzzle, and over the course of hundreds of years they slowly deteriorate, that's obviously the last thing I want. But they're essentially the lasso that's going to hook people into the natural world. And then once you sort of get your skills up, then we need people sort of like dispersing and going out off the beaten track like what you do. And even Steve Irwin had a similar approach, where people would question him like, why are you picking up all these animals? Why are you putting animals in enclosures? And essentially he's like, we need as many people getting around animals as possible. And if it means that there's animals in cages, then it's the price we've got to pay. So I kind of feel like, looking at big picture, if we continue to close places, then less and less people can have an opportunity to fall in love with the outdoors. And we know what happens if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. And not everyone, especially people that haven't spent much time outdoors, wants to do the more extensive adventures that you and I potentially go on more often, like hiking 5 months across the country or spending 6 weeks off track in the New South Wales wilderness, which we'll get into some of your hectic adventures soon. But like you were saying earlier, there's something for everyone outdoors. Whether you want to lie down on your belly and film little insects on a log for 3 hours, or you want to hike a mountain off track and absolutely test yourself and see what you're capable of, or you just want to go for a stroll at your local park. There's something for everyone outdoors, and I just encourage everyone to see what that is for you, because it's just, you can attest to, you had the before you spent time in nature, and the after, and how much of a difference that made on your mental and potentially physical health as well. And I think so many people could benefit for that. So, I love your perspective and your ideas, man. It's really, really cool. And I think we just need to spread that awareness as much as possible.
And that's the key. I'm glad you said the word awareness, because what you can get from the outdoors, there's a part of that can be grasped just by sitting still in your room, closing your eyes, and just having a think and just being present and reflecting. I think a lot of what the outdoors does for me is providing a canvas to reflect and get a greater self-awareness and how me, tiny little Ben, relates to the bigger picture. And I see a lot of people that are constantly going and they're doing these crazy adventures, and I think they're leaving a lot on the table when it like for example, doing something like this where you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, doing a podcast, having a yarn, writing a poem, trying meditation, doing an ice bath, all these little things they can do, all these fads, ultimately they're a way of getting to know yourself better. And I think if you're constantly doing one thing, you're leaving a lot on the table. Well, that's how I feel personally.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I think a lot of people could benefit from stepping out of their routine and their comfort zones in whatever way that looks like. I think the outdoors is the best arena for that because there's just so much opportunity to see things you've never seen before and do things you've never done. But everyday life, there are opportunities that arise to put yourself in situations where you are going to grow as a person, as a human, and discover more about yourself, which I think not only benefits you as an individual, but it benefits your community and society as a whole. If everyone was out there just pushing themselves and leveling up, the whole kind of crowd just rises with them, I think. And I've noticed that in my life, the more hard things I do and the more I really step out of my comfort zone, the more people around me also are doing those things and the more people that come into my life that are of that sort of mindset. And it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's also just worth mentioning for some people that maybe haven't spent a lot of time in the outdoors, whether it's because of their upbringing or their school didn't have outdoor education. Like, it's okay to be afraid of the outdoors. It's okay to go out the first few times and feel a little empty. It's one of those things, like anything in life, the adventure realm is kind of glamorized online in a way where there's all these fast-paced reels and there's all these high highs and these crazy moments. And then so where your everyday Aussie goes out to their waterfall and they snap a quick selfie and they're kind of looking around, they're like, oh, what now? And then they leave and it's like it's a good start. Like, that's a really good place to start. But where the magic really starts to come is when you invest time, when you go on YouTube and learn a little bit about backpacking and get a secondhand pack and a secondhand tent and actually go out and watch some sunrises and, not only go to all the popular spots that you hear everyone talk about, but find out a few secret gems off locals that no one goes to. And you're going out to these places, you've got it all by yourself. And then all of a sudden, a cassowary just walks up out of nowhere and you're like, oh wow, like I would have never got this opportunity if I went to that waterfall with every man and their dog there. And so I know it seems like I'm saying like this is the right way to do it, but that's not the case at all. What I'm trying to say is there's no right or no wrong way to do it. I think the only wrong way to do it would be to go out and leave rubbish and disrespect the place. Like, that's obviously the asterisk that needs to get said. You need to, take only photographs, leave only footprints. But other than that, if you have permission to be there and you're going to be respectful, it is a canvas and the possibilities are limitless.
Love that, dude. I hope people listening take that on board. That's some incredible words. Speaking of cassowaries, I've always wanted to see one, and I saw. Did you just post up a reel like today of some cassowaries or something? I've been up to Far North Queensland many times, and that's like top of my Aussie bucket list at this point is to see one in the wild. That's freaking. They're sick animals.
Yeah, I have always wanted to see one as well. And just recently, I did a 10-day filming and guiding gig up in Far North Queensland. So we did a few days in Cairns and then went up to Daintree Rainforest. Essentially, I'm in like a shadow guiding role. And then I whip out my camera and put together like a highlight video for the school so I can kind of bill them twice. And we were fortunate enough to get to see three cassowaries actually. prehistoric animals. Like they've been roaming around for like, I think even back when the dinosaurs were here. Like
Wow.
don't quote me on that, but they have a look about them like they're just like this little like hybrid T-Rex emu. And it blew my mind. I was lucky enough to get to spend probably 20 minutes with one about a meter or two away, and it was clearly happy for me to be in that vicinity. I kind of gauged and like worked my way closer and closer, and just seeing them up close and personal. Like it was definitely one of the coolest wildlife encounters I've ever had. So yeah, highly recommend getting up to the Daintree rainforest, people, if you've never been. It's incredible.
Cassowaries can mess you up, right? This is a bit of a tangent, but they don't they have like
Yeah.
hella claws and they can get you good.
Yeah, they have like these big like talon
Mm,
things, and yeah, you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of them. So again, like I wouldn't be as worried about cassowaries as say the saltwater crocs up there.
yeah.
Like the place where we were not too long ago, someone was nabbed by a salty in an area that they knew were salty. So it's one of those things like it's really upsetting that that happened to the person. But if people follow just like general sort of guidelines and don't believe everything they see online, generally speaking, there really isn't out there much like there isn't out there isn't a lot out there that's trying to get you. And I feel like people like Joe Rogan, for example, who has the biggest podcast in the world, he's been vocal about, oh, he would never come to Australia because everything out there is trying to kill you. And it's really not the case. Like if you chuck some gaiters on to protect you from snakes, if you keep your headphones out and actually listen to your surroundings, you don't swim in areas where there's saltwater crocs,
You should be
the
fine.
only thing really to worry
Yeah.
about is humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty chill.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think everyone who's not like, I'm animals in America to me are like scary, and Americans are super scared of Australian animals. It's like you're always scared of the place that you're not from because you're not used to it and you're not really sure how to, responsibly hike or explore in those environments. But I've been the more and more I adventure, the more and more I've been really into the animals. I feel like when I started, I wanted to see the landscapes, the mountains and the waterfalls, but um, just the wildlife has been a huge highlight for me lately. Hiking in Australia, hiking in the US last year. I'm heading off on a 4-day mission here in Japan tomorrow, and I'm just like looking forward to finding a bear, hopefully, or like some Japanese sero and deers and the taranaki. And there's all these incredible animals that I want to see, almost more than the mountains. So yeah. Anyway, cassowary is the top of my Aussie bucket list.
Yeah.
I want to encounter one at some point, so I'll be back in the Daintree, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, on that note, I met this bloke, Golly. He is a phenomenal man. He was one of our instructors because the kids that we took up there, it's like a service-based trip. Like we do all these fun snorkeling trips on the Great Barrier Reef, but then we're planting trees and we're picking up rubbish and we're hanging out with some of the local mobs, and it's really like immersive and cultural experience for the kids. And Golly, he's been a part of planting close to 200,000
Whoa.
trees up in the Daintree rainforest. He's got dreadlocks that go down to his knees, and then he's like wrapped it up in this like ball, and he's just like the most iconic looking dude ever. And yeah, the reason I bring him up, if you want to go stay at his place, that's an option. He said to me, yeah, come back whenever, just give me a week's notice, and I could pull a couple strings and get you some free accommodation up there in the heart of Daintree. And on that note, it's like you go up to these places, and I think it's one thing I like about guiding and being a part of a community that has spent a lot of time there, because you go up by yourself, you have no idea what you're doing, you don't know where to start, you're kind of just like on Google Maps and like taking the odd suggestion. But when you spend time with the locals, like it's a completely different experience. Like they have so much knowledge, and I still don't really like paying for trips just because like I don't really need to. But the more I'm around these people, the more I'm open to dropping a bit of cash, going with people that actually care about the environment and putting the money to good things, and soaking up wisdom, because you spend an hour with them and you're going to get more knowledge than you would get in a week trip by yourself. Like Golly showed us this tree that is the biggest tree in the area that they've found. It's like a 60-meter high thick tree.
Whoa.
David Attenborough, I think, it was in one of his films, and so Golly found it and he named it after David Attenborough. And every day, tourists would drive straight past it and not knowing that it's right under their nose. So when I'm traveling, like when I'm hitchhiking, that's why I love hitchhiking. You're just in the car, yarning with locals, and that's how you get the best spots. And again, a bit of an asterisk with that. If you think you're just going to rock up somewhere and then people are going to give you all of their best spots straight off the bat, then you may have another thing coming. That's what I sort of thought when I got over to Exmouth for the first time. I'd seen footage of the place and I'm like, it's going to be 30-meter viz every day. I'm going to be swimming with whale sharks. This is going to be the best thing ever. And then you realize that the weather is in control and you got to put in the work, and locals aren't going to tell you their spots. Why should they? They're so used to having people come in, disrespect the place, and then piss off that I can't blame the locals for not wanting to tell them. So it's the same when going into Aboriginal communities. You think you're going to go in and the first encounter, you're going to be able to film them and interview them and they're going to just share all their secrets. It's not the case. You got to build up rapport.
Yeah.
You got to earn the respect.
Yeah. 100%. And once you do earn that respect and build that relationship, like you said, it opens up a whole new world to these places. Some of my best adventures are just through word of mouth, just talking to someone who knows more than you could ever find on Google or YouTube. And you have these epic spots, and it is the best way to travel. And the same thing, a lot of times I've hitchhiked as well. The people that are driving me around these places that I'm not from, and they'll say, "Oh, you should go check out this spot," or even if it's in a town, or you should go check out this spot, and it's just stuff you'd never know otherwise. I think you mentioned that you've hitchhiked pretty extensively, right across Australia or even around Australia. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm actually a semi-professional hitchhiker.
Wow.
Nah, I'm just mucking around. On the back end of COVID, I was like itching for an adventure. As I said, I'd spent the first half of my 20s twiddling my thumbs, partying. And then I finished a year of studying to be a guide. And for the next 2 years after that, I was doing filmmaking and outdoor educating. So it was kind of like my apprenticeship of sorts. And I was just working. And then COVID came in, the bushfires came in. And as that sort of started wrapping up, I split with my ex, Indy. She was amazing. And I'm like, all right, time to send it. Time to like go on a pilgrimage. And so,
Right.
I went over to Exmouth and, as I said, spent a few months there. And I was like, oh, I've been telling everyone I'm going to go hitchhiking. Now it's actually time. And I was deciding like whether to go south from Exmouth and go down the west coast and play it safe. But the Kimberley was calling me.
Yeah.
And I decided to head up to the Kimberley in the build-up, which is not the right time to go, for the record. And so I spent 3 months up in that area in September through to November, I think it was. It's like 40-degree days. I pretty much never went anywhere without 20 liters of water because, they say on the East Coast, like you can survive, a few days without water. And people would say to me up there in the Kimberley, like if you're moving and it's 100% humidity, 40-degree day, like it's not 3 days, it's like 24 to 36 hours sort of thing. So I was like carrying 15, 20 liters of water, getting rides with people from all walks of life. It was incredible. Like the first couple of days, I got stuck on the side of the road for 24 hours and I was thinking about throwing in the towel straight away. And I decided to stick it out a little bit longer, and someone ended up picking me up, cracking me a beer and dropped me off at Karajini National Park. And I was like, okay, this is what it's all about. And
wow.
Yeah, spent a bit of time up in the Kimberley, and that just rewired the way I view Australia. I feel like I'm back 10, 20 years when people still like wave at one another when they're driving down the road, and people check on you, and people walk around and actually like say g'day when you're at the shopping centre and stuff. And that place really got me. And I was fortunate enough to get picked up by a lovely lady up in Darwin, and she was working out on a remote Indigenous community near Halls Creek. And I pulled a couple of strings and kept in contact with her, and she gave me permission to go out and spend time in the community. And I just hitchhiked into Pernalulu National Park, the Bungle Bungles, end of the season, no one around, and I'd met the two caretakers, two 30-year-old Indigenous women, and they're like, what's ours is yours. And they were staying in a 4-star retreat. I've gone from like just not really getting any sleep because it's so hot to in like an area with aircon, and they're like got like some beers and food, and I'm just like living like a king. And I went and spent 4 days cruising around the bungles by myself, absolutely loving it, but just getting smacked by the sun. And I made it back, and the girls were like, stay here for as long as you want. And then all of a sudden I got a call up from the teacher saying, hey, if you want to come out, now's your window. You need to get to Halls Creek, and Sister Alma, the nun, will give you a lift out there tomorrow morning. And I was about 6 to 8 hours away. And so I just sat on the side of the road for 4 hours. Eventually this Italian bloke picked me up. He got me out to the edge of the highway, and then I still had a few hours more to go to get into Halls Creek. And the sun was about to set, about to throw in the towel. And I'm like, I'll sit out here for 15 minutes and see how I go. Because I'd sort of set a bit of a rule, like try not to stay out past sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first time really doing that. And within 10 minutes, a car comes over the crest, 140 kilometers an hour, slams on the brakes. And there was 8 young Indigenous men crammed in a 5-seater. And they just put down the window, and they're just looking at me, and they're just like licking their lips. Like, I had my life savings of camera gear in that backpack, like steal my Toyota Coaster, steal everything, but just don't take my backpack. Like, this is my life. And they were looking at me, just like talking in their language, like, you know, just like looking pretty aggressive. And I'm just like trying to exert so much positive energy, like, hey, go on, boys, like just so scared. And they ended up kind of looking at me and just shrugging and just floored it out of there. And I ended up going and started running off in the bushes. And then another car came over the crest, and I'm like, I'll throw out one more Hail Mary. And this lovely care worker, she had a 80-year-old Indigenous elder in the car with her, and she risked her job to give me a lift to Halls Creek.
Wow.
Got there to Halls Creek, got a lift out at 6 a.m. with Sister Alma, and thought I was spending a couple of days out there in my tent. And I got put up in my own donga, which is kind of like a shipping container with aircon and a kitchen and a bed, and spent the next 2 weeks hanging out with the kids, volunteering. And I thought, how can I make them something to show that I'm grateful for this experience? And you go out to these remote communities and you think it's going to be one thing, and it was completely different. Like, it was more westernized than I would have thought. Like, they have Catholic roots, and they still practice a bit of culture, but there was like, you know, there was church being practiced, and I still got welcomed with the smoking ceremony. So it was a bit of a combination. And I noticed that the culture and their language is slowly fading away. There was only a couple people left in this community that still spoke language, and the youngsters growing up were very sort of like, you know, half in, half out. And so I put together a short 4-minute video of all my animal footage that I'd captured so far in WA. And then I worked with one of the local elders, and I got the job for the animal and then English spelling for the animal. And then I played them a video, and all the kids were just like yelling out, you know, like mundug. And then, you know, and then you'd see like the snake that corresponded, and it like filled my heart so much. It was such a cool little project.
Amazing.
And I ended up realizing about 3 months later, I got picked up by this fella, and I'm telling him this story. And I think he was the first person that I really shared this story with thoroughly. And he was really invested in Indigenous culture, and he was asking me questions, and he's like, oh yeah, so did you use like a dictionary? And I'm like, yeah, it was like a, you know, red dictionary. And he's like, yeah, and it had like black bindings on it. And I'm like, yeah, that's the one. He's like, you're not going to believe this, but I was the author of that 20 years ago.
What?
And I was just like, what is going on? Like, that community is in proper whoop in the middle of the Kimberley. Kimberley's like 3 times the size of UK. And this is one tiny little community of many. And this guy just so happened to have spent a lot of his time here and has helped keep the language alive. And then fast forward 20 years and I'm sort of doing the same thing in my own little way. And these synchronicities just kept happening throughout the hitchhiking journey. It was honestly amazing. Like it's made me like start to believe in something else that I can't see. And I don't have a clear picture on what that is. Like, but it just felt like I was being rewarded for sitting out on the side of the road and suffering.
Whether it was the universe or God or whatever, you were obviously on your right path. That's very cool. I've actually never been to the Kimberley, and I've lived in Western Australia my entire life. But the way you and others talk about it, it sounds like a very special place. I think I'm going to head up there next season. I've got some friends that live in Kununurra. That's a pretty wild introductory to hitchhiking though, because I mean, hitchhiking can be a lot easier in highly populated areas. You're out there in some of the most desolate landscapes in the world, the Pilbara and the Kimberley. It's just there's a lot of nothing out there, not many people, and like you said, super hot that time of year. So a pretty
Yeah.
a pretty wild introduction, but dude, you're on your path. So did you end up hitchhiking all the way back to the East Coast then after you left the Kimberley and into the NT?
Yeah, so I'll go back a tiny bit. So once I finished up in that community, I spent a little bit longer up in the Kimberley, and then as the wet season started approaching, I'm like, okay, it's time to make the WA migration down south.
Okay.
And I made my way from Kununurra, and I think it took me like 2.5 to 3 days to get from Kununurra to Halls Creek, which is just slow going. Like on average, I'd usually spend, you know, 3 to 4 to 5 hours in a car per day. And plenty of days where I'm not in the car, I'm just out hiking and exploring and filming. And it took me days to get to Halls Creek. And I was like reaching a tipping point. I was really hot. I was starting to just get sick of it after a few months. And I got to Halls Creek, which has a reputation up that way. Like there's quite a bit of crime, domestic violence, alcoholism. And then there's also just so many beautiful locals that have so much time for you. And I'm in this place, it's absolutely bucketing down, and I'm having to walk from undercover out to the middle of the side of the road, throw the thumb out and get rejected, and then walk back. And plenty of the locals were sitting under the shelters, hung over, just laughing at me, like, look at this guttier, which is like white fella.
Yeah.
And like they were all getting a massive kick out of it. And I was there all day, and it got to sunset, and I'm like, this place is coming alive. Like people were coming out, everyone was starting to get on the drink. There was little fights spiraling out, and I'm like, I'm going to break the rule. I'm going to hang around and see what happens here. Like this is full on. And these are probably like half a dozen young boys came up out of nowhere, and one of them was carrying a big bong, like it probably went up to his waist. He would have been like 12 years old.
Wow.
And like they're up there offering me stuff, and then all of a sudden they're like trying to offer to steal me a car and they'll take me wherever I want. And they were genuine, like, and I'd heard lots of stories about kids doing this, and I'm like giving them like uncle advice. I'm like, what are you boys doing this stuff? Like, like of course I don't, I'm trying to, like, without being their dad, I'm just trying to be like, come on, like, you don't need to steal cars. And like, had a bit of a yarn with them. They got going, and then as it started getting really dark, they came back, and I turned around, and instead of there being 6 of them, there was probably 25 of them. And some of them had like little baseball bats and hockey sticks and just like weapons. And within a second, they all surrounded me in a big circle. And I have like all my camera gear out. I'm like quickly trying to pack it away. And the few that I'd originally spoken to were up in front, and they were like keeping the peace and trying to distract me while the others were trying to steal stuff out of my bag. And I'm like, boys, like, I'm on to you. Like, don't even try. Like, don't even try. And I like wasn't in a position where I could get up and outrun them. I had like a 25-kilo pack on. And I'm like, I'm going to have to talk my way out of this one. So I'm like, oh, yeah, you boys play a bit of footy? Like, what's going on? Like, if I'm going to move up this way, who should I play footy for? And they're all like saying their local teams. And one of the kids spits out like the place that I just spent a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh, like I was just out in Kundat Jaru, and he's like, yeah, like play for us. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, like like there's a dirt oval out there. I don't know if I'm like tough enough to play on the dirt oval. And he's like, dirt oval, and he looked at me and he's like, are you being racist? You say my people can't afford grass. And then all of a sudden, all of them went from like being like kind of chill to just like ready to like attack. And
Jeez.
I'm like, oh my God, I need to diffuse. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I'm just saying that like, I'm not tough enough. Like you guys are amazing athletes. Like I've just, like, and they sort of chilled out, but this one kid was still like, had the group in his hands, and he was like rallying half of them. And then the other half were like, no, he's all right. And then I'm like, all right, boys, I've got this, I've got a surprise for you. Think of a number between 1 and 25. Whoever gets the closest, I'll give you the surprise. And they're all like thinking of their number. And I had like an old GoPro 9 that I didn't use anymore. And I'm like, I'm just going to like throw them something here. I need to get out of this situation. And the kid that ended up getting closest, he was the one gentleman. And I'm like, oh, like I'm glad I'm giving it to this kid. And so I gave it to him and explained how to use it. And then it's diffused. And I'm like, I can just take my first like sigh in like 10 minutes. And they're like, what are you doing up here anyway? And I'm like, oh, just, filming, going on adventures. And they're like, show us some of your stuff. And I pulled out my phone. And as soon as I pulled out my phone again, they were like on me like seagulls, like wanting blood. And then I'm just like, okay, this is not going to end. And I just like fully just put on like this facade. And I'm like, righto, boys, listen here. You've taken it a step too far. And I just like went like stern,
Dude.
like uncle mode without like being too like aggressive. And I'm like, this is like make or break. And that one kid, he was like ready to like hit me with his little hockey stick. And then they all just kind of like diffused and like realized, like, I'm like, come on, like I thought we were mates. And like,
Yeah.
and it was just super awkward. And I picked up my bag, go to start walking away, and all their heads are down. And I'm like, all right, boys, I forgive you. And I go back and like give all 25 of them like a bro shake and like a hug and, lift the spirits up again. And got around the corner and just absolutely legged it with my pack on. I'm like, oh my God, I need to get out of the Kimberley.
Dude. I feel like situations like that would prepare you for most situations you're going to encounter on a lap of Oz hitchhiking. And so it's almost a blessing in
Yeah.
disguise that you experienced it early, and it would have given you the confidence to be like, all right, I've sat on the side of the road for, a day or more. I've been in some pretty rough situations. I should be right from here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I've actually been really skeptical of saying that one on the record because I feel like it can warp people's perspective of what it's actually like. I spent the best part of a year doing it. It ended up being 200 lifts exactly
Wow.
to the finish line, and that's like the whole country. And there's definitely like so much back and forth, like up in the Kimberley. It rounded up to close to 25,000 kilometers. And of the 200 lifts, there was probably two where I'm like, probably prefer not to see that person again. But other than that, it really did restore my faith in humanity after COVID. Like, it felt like after COVID, everyone, well, just about everyone's like, I protect me,
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
after doing that, it was like, oh no, like so many people have my back. Like, and it was incredible. Like, I kept tabs of pretty much everyone that picked me up, and a lot of people in their middle age just willing to give me everything, even the amount of people that just pulled over to check up on me. And to answer your original question, so after I finished in WA, I got down south and I was going to spend summer down south, and I'm like, you know what, I want to surprise my family for Christmas. So I challenged myself to get from Margs in southwest WA over to south coast of New South Wales in a week with no money and
Purely
without my
hitchhiking.
phone.
What?
And yeah, and also I had a few days worth of food as well. So I was kind of like, had 3-4 months under my belt. I'm like, this is kind of getting easy. Let's see if I can spice it up a bit. And so yeah, I tried to get from Margs across to there in a week, and the first couple of days were going kind of good. Third day, I got to the start of the Nullarbor and realized once I get here, I'm probably going to be with someone for a few days. And this guy, first person to pull over, happened to be going to Albury, which is like the next major checkpoint. So, like start of the Nullarbor on the west coast to Albury, like that, the odds of someone going there was just like mind blowing. And he ended up being a psycho. Like that was one of the other lifts where I'm like, oh, this guy's crazy. Like he was an ex heroin addict, and we had a few good yarns, but he was covering no distance, and he was just progressively getting weirder and weirder. And it sort of reached a tipping point where I said to him one night after a massive drive, hey mate, like I'm going to hit the hay. Um, and like he'd been shouting me food as well. Like I almost forgot to mention that. Like I had no food, and he's like, if you drive, I'm happy to shout all your meals. And I'm
Wow.
like, thank you, thank you. And yeah, third night we'd covered not much ground at all, and he randomly cracked the shits at me because I asked to turn the TV off, and he was sitting out the front about to spend the night drinking. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to turn the TV off, hit the hay, come in. All you need to do is press the remote and you're good to go. And he lost it. And I was like, oh, wow, like the straw that broke the camel's back. And he's there, like sitting over me, like blowing up at me. And I'm like, all right, like I'm packing up. It's time to get out of here. And he wouldn't let me go into the car to get my water bladder. And he's like, you're not going near the car. Like he fully turned on me. And then same deal as I did to the young fellas. I'm like, come on. Like, and I just like
Yeah.
staunched him. Like I can't remember the last time being in a fight, like maybe a couple little scuffles in sport, like not in my nature. So fully just like winging it. And he sort of like, yeah, here's the keys. And I went over, set up my tent, and then realized I'd left something with him. And so I had to go back over, and the exact same thing happened again. I'm like, oh, can I? And he's about to tell me no. And I'm like, give me the keys, mate. Like, so it actually, this whole journey, like as amazing as it was, it like taught me to be someone that I didn't realize I was or had to be
Hmm.
just to get by. And that's the thing with traveling. Sometimes people don't talk about, like, there's so many high highs, but every now and then you're going to have to dig deep, and you got to bring some confidence to the table.
Yeah, and putting yourself in situations, whether it's intentionally or accidentally, but like in that case with this guy, it does teach you how to handle situations more effectively in the future, and that can only be a good thing, I think. What was the best hitchhiking experience you had on that big lap? Because we've heard about a couple of bad situations.
Yeah, I should probably tell you a good
I
one.
want to hear the best or the most wholesome.
The most wholesome. Okay, well, I hitchhiked across to the east coast. Then I went down to Tassie for a couple months. Oh, another whole story in of itself. Went back up to Sydney, and then I wanted to I had to get back down towards Victoria, and I got kicked out of the car just out of the blue by this couple because it was the first time that I'd fell asleep. And so I always try to give people presents when I'm in their vehicle. So music was rarely on. We're always chatting, and I'm trying to give them the time of day because often I didn't have money, and that's all I had to give. Stories,
Yeah.
good energy, and someone to yarn to. Got kicked out of this car respectfully, and 10 minutes later I get picked up by another lovely lady, and I literally just felt like I found my guru, and instantly we connected. We spent the next 3 hours together. She'll probably listen to this, so Jen, I love ya. We ended up just having the best chat. Like, she's an osteo, talking about stuff that I never thought I'd talk about. Like, we're going back through the archives, talking about childhood trauma, talking about narcissism, talking about all these things. And she's Indigenous, so she has this real cultural element to her that I love. And her wisdom was just so timing. So we ended up spending the few hours together. I went down to Tassie. She probably thought she was never going to hear from me again. I came back from Tassie 2 months later after running amok down there with the friends, and called her up like, hey, so how about that osteo session? Can I come see her? She cleared her schedule for me. I got over to her place, hitchhiking from Geelong down to near Grantville, which is down near Phillip Island. Hung out with her son. We're like shooting his homemade compound bow in the backyard. And then she gave me a 3.5 to 4 hour massage and osteopathic session
Wow.
from like 9:30 at night through till like 2 in the morning or whatever it was, and just serviced my whole body, my spirit, and just came out of there feeling like a new man. And ever since, we've kept in touch. Like, I literally have like a bit of a base at her place now. So because I'm so transient with work, I'm always flying over the joint. I've got stuff at her place, and if I'm ever near Melbourne, I'll get on a train, go down. And I just felt like meeting her was like more important than, say, meeting like a new girlfriend out there on the road. And her knowledge and the doors she's opened for me ever since has just been invaluable. So yeah, there's stories like that that just happen time and time again. But Jen's someone that I feel like I'm going to be really close with for the rest of my life.
There we go. That's that restores faith in humanity. That's super cool. I had so many experiences in a similar vein in the US when I was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail last year, because we hitchhiked a lot to get out to towns to resupply and that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
yeah, faith in humanity restored. The kindness of people, especially, like, we were disgusting. We were smelly and stinky on the side of the road, and I'm sure you were probably in a similar state a lot of the times where you were hitchhiking as well. And people were just so willing to give up so much for someone they've never met before. And people were, opening their homes to us. So we had people lending their cars to us in town so we could get around. Just like crazy stuff like that, like putting so much trust into like a random person. But um, it inspires me so much to
Was
give.
there a standout one?
Oh, there was plenty of stand. Like there was this one family in Leavenworth in Washington that drove out about an hour from their town of Leavenworth to the crossover on the highway where the trailhead was. And yeah, they drove us into town. They put us up in their incredibly nice house on a property just out of town. We ended up spending 2 nights there. They lent us their BMW, which just like, I was with an American girl, Emma, and she had obviously could drive, and she drove. We were able to drive around town, and they owned the local reindeer farm, which was a big tourist attraction there. And so they invited us to the farm. We got to meet all the reindeers and experience all of these really cool local things with them. And that was one of the highlights of people that just picked us up off the side of the road. And there was so many more that would invite us to their home or just invite us out to a meal, or like, just sometimes people just give you cash. Like, that happened a few times. It's just people are amazing. And especially, like, I had this perception going to the US. It wasn't necessarily that people weren't friendly. It's just like, I didn't think that we had experienced that kind of generosity, and it was like a highlight for me. It was so cool. And same in Australia. I've hitchhiked quite a bit here, from cities to trails and that kind of stuff. And yeah, people are really, really cool. Yeah, that sounds like a wild adventure,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. It was incredible, and it kind of just, yeah. Like, I could tell you hitchhiking stories all day long, but I'll tell you one last one that leads into that bushwalk. So I, I finished up in Tassie, and then someone I'd met up in the Kimberley a couple months earlier happened to be leaving from the Blue Mountains and going back up to the Kimberley, and a work opportunity had popped up. So I'm like, that's where I want to be. Like, that's the Australia that I want to learn about. So I got a lift back up to the Kimberley with him, and then spent a few months working there, filming it out of helicopters and doing a lot of like trail running. And because I'd done Fed Peak when I was down in Tassie the first time in a day. Like, I hitchhiked out there,
Wow.
and I tried to go out and do it in a day, and that was like, up until that point, the biggest day I've ever had in the mountains. And it was like 17 hours or something. And at the end of it, I was hitchhiking back into town because I had a 6-day filming shoot the day after. And so the chick in the car, I'm like, how much more effort would it be to do the entire Arthur's Traverse? And she's like, what you just did, it's kind of like doing that twice or maybe 2.5 times back to back. And when she said that, I was just like, I couldn't even fathom doing what I'd just done twice, let alone more than that.
Yeah.
And it was the first time in my adult life where I'm like, I'm going to make some sacrifices, and I'm going to have a crack at this next summer. And usually I'm just like, rock up, no training, wing it and limp over the line. But this is like, I knew that I would have had to put in like a lot of effort and be consistent for a full year to even have a chance of doing the Arthurs. And so, yeah, went up to the Kimberley, really started hooking in with my running. And I actually ended up playing half a season of footy up there. Like, and it was unreal. Like, just like first time playing AFL, that was so sweet. And yeah, I was thinking about actually just basing myself there. And I was sort of in this crossroads, like, I've hitchhiked 3/4 of the way around Australia. I've had a little pit stop up here in the Kimberley. Am I going to get back into it? And I had a bit of a chance to buy myself some time, did a 10-day road trip with my sister and her family across the Gibb River Road, which was unbelievable. And then I had to hitchhike from Derby to the Bungle Bungles to meet my two best mates. And I got out on the side of the road, and I'd been at that same spot twice already and spent hours there. And I'm like, all right, here we go. Lock them back in, back to the Kimberley. This is going to be rough. Not looking forward to it at all. And instantly a road train pulls over, a big 3-carriage, 130-ton road train. 25-year-old rodeo country boy, go and get him, brother. He's just like the funniest dude. He's like instantly showing me videos of him. His mate was driving a ute out in the desert. He's on the back of a ute. He launches off the back of the ute onto a camel going about 20 kilometers per hour, a wild camel.
What?
And he's on the camel, he's just barebacking this camel, filming himself. And this dude was so funny. Like, he was so rogue. And he's like showing me videos of him like getting bucked off a horse because he does like rodeo. Got bucked off a horse, broke his neck and fully blacked out. And it was just like another day at the office for him. And he's driving along and we're going about 110 on this straight road. And he just looks at me, he's like, you want to have a steer, brother? And I'm like, what do you mean? And before I got a chance to think about it, he's stepped out of the driver's seat and he's stepped back into the little bed behind the driving console. And he just ushers me in the driving seat. And I'm like, when in Rome. And so I've just like jumped straight in. And all of a sudden, like, I'm locked in at 110 kilometers per hour, looking in the revision mirror. And I'm holding the steering wheel like as straight as I can, just like wigging out. And he's like, yeah, just like turn the wheel a little bit, bro. And I just gave it the most micro movement. And the third carriage at the back starts like fishtailing out a little bit. And I'm like panicking. And then all of a sudden another road train starts coming straight at us on this skinny highway road. And I'm just like, oh, lock in. Like, I didn't breathe for like the 10 seconds as we were coming up alongside that road trade. And we just got like rattled as we went past it. I'm like hugging up alongside the road. And as soon as we got past, I just looked at him and he just starts pissing himself laughing. And then I just step out and he takes back over. And, that was my first lift back in a couple of months. And I'm like, that's a sign. The show goes on.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get back into this. So I spent 8 days hiking in the Bungle Bungles with two of my best mates. You definitely got to hike up in there. You're going to Piccaninny Gorge, I think it is, and explore all the fingers. Like, I'm going to tell you a bunch of spots to check out when you're up that way and can put you onto some people. But just so your listeners know, Piccaninny Gorge, everyone goes to like Echidna Chasm and Cathedral Rock, but highly recommend getting off the beaten track and actually doing a multi-dayer.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the best hikes of my life. And anyways, doubled back down to Exmouth with my two best mates. And I was thinking, okay, like maybe the hitchhiking isn't for me. Like, I'll hang out with my mates, we'll rig some high lines, we'll hang out in Exmouth. And then I got my first minute to myself in like a month and just like caught up with myself. And that's what's so beautiful about the outdoors. I'm just like in a hammock, quiet, having a moment. And then I'm just like, get back into it. Like, it's a no-brainer. And so the next day I bailed on the boys and challenged myself again to get from the west coast to the east coast. But this time, instead of going down the bottom, I went above the top. And I think I gave myself like 7 or 8 days to cross from Exmouth to the Gold Coast so I could get to a highline gathering.
That's way harder than going across the Nullarbor in 7 days.
Yeah, it's a different experience. It's hard to decide which one was better, but there was something really special about that second journey, just how it flowed. And I was back in some of the same places I'd been 6 months earlier. And the first time I was there, I'm like, I need to get 8 hours away. Like, I might die. And then fast forward 6 months, and I'm like, oh, I've got to get 16 hours away. That's literally just up the road. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to be a piece of cake. And it's got lift after lift. Like, I could just tell you so many stories, like with these old battlers that you go for days. And I ended up getting to halfway through Australia, and I got picked up by a lady. She had another hitchhiker in the car. He'd just come over from England. He was 17 years old, and he'd gone straight up to Darwin, walked down to the harbour, and said, I'm not leaving here till I get a job. 2 hours later, he got recruited out onto a commercial fishing boat. Then the following day, he spent 10 days out at sea. And I just saw him after he finished that trip. He said that he worked 23-hour days. His job was sorting all the sea snakes and bycatch from the haul. So he's pulling out snakes, stingrays. Like, he had stingray scars on him. Like,
What?
it literally sounds like proper like slave labor work. And he's like, man, I'm traumatized. Like, I didn't think Australia was going to be like this. And I'm like, oh, bro, you've like landed in the right car. Like, I got some news for you. And he was like really happy that he'd made like $2,000 over the 10 days. And I'm like, mate, and I got my calculator out. I'm like, you were earning $9 an hour.
Oh.
Like, he probably got ripped off. And he'd spent 4 days hitchhiking from Darwin down to Catherine, which is like 400 kilometers or something. And I'd spent 3 days and got from 3.5 days, I got from Exmouth to Catherine, which is like
a lot longer,
3,000 kilometers or something. Yeah. And I'm like, just took him under my wing and told him everything I could. And we ended up parting ways, and I picked up a lift at Three Ways, and he was going to the Gold Coast. So got across the country, and I think it ended up being like 6 or 7 days, 6,500 kilometers. And yeah, got to the Highline gathering just in time. That was unreal. And then I hitchhiked, and this is like the home straight of the journey. I needed to get from the Gold Coast down to Blue Mountains in a day, really struggling to get out of the city, finally walk out onto the main road, just like throwing the thumb out, like, this is not good. Like, you shouldn't hitchhike from like places like this where there's cars everywhere and it's hectic. But I had no option. A van ends up pulling over, and it ends up being one of my mates I haven't seen in 3 years. And I was like, what a fitting way to wrap this up. Like, one of my old mates, he had no idea it was me, hadn't seen each other for years. And then all of a sudden I'm in the car with Benny Hibbert, and we boosted down to Sydney together. He dropped me off, and then I sort of did a bit of a shuffle through Sydney, which was a nightmare. And I ended up, the last major sort of crux of the journey, I'm sitting in a servo, it's torrential rain. I had 12 hours the following day, or 16 hours, a full day to prepare for a 4-week bushwalk. I'm like, I need to get to the Blue Mountains tonight. And people are in the servo, and I'm like, hey, how you going? Like, I know this is a bit weird, but do you reckon I could get a lift to the Blue Mountains? And I probably asked like 50 people, and they're all kind of like, look at this muck, like, what's his go? And some of them laughed, and some of them like were chill about it. And eventually someone took the bait and took me down the road. And just as I pulled up at the servo, after spending 4 hours at the last servo, this guy's trying to say like a nice extended farewell. And I'm like, sorry, bro, there's another car here. I gotta jump out. Jumped out of one car. As the other car's driving out of the servo, I like ushered him. I'm like, stop. Had a good feeling about him. Got straight in the car with him. And that was the 200th lift. And it got me to the finish line of the entire lap of Australia. And I was like, 200? And like, the last guy was the biggest legend. It was just like, it was really poetic. Like, and then finally I'm like, oh, the hitchhiking's over. And then I'm like, oh no, I've got a month bushwalk ahead of me. And I forgot to mention a big part of the story, but after getting up to the Kimberley and a couple months of training really hard and getting fit and thinking that the dream of the Arthur's Traverse is alive, I got a really bad groin injury from overuse. And so for the 2 to 3 months leading up to this, I'd been stagnant and I'd lost all my psych. I'd lost my fitness, and I'm like, the Arthur's Traverse dream is over. And now all of a sudden, I've met up with my mate Leo and Ed. Leo is the most hardcore bushwalker I know, and it was time to keep up with him for 30 days, trying to traverse from the top of the Wallamine National Park, which is inland from Newcastle, predominantly all off track, down through the Wallamine, Blue Mountains, Natai, Morden National Park, and finish down in the Butterwangs. And his 25th birthday was scheduled to be on the final day of the bushwalk. So, yeah,
Dude.
oh, like I don't even know if I'm like ready to tell that story. It was gnarly. Hey,
I need to hear about it because
yeah, yeah.
I love hearing about off-track adventurers. I have a mate James Allen. I don't know if you've heard of him or seen him around. He's a crazy dude who does some crazy adventures, and he always talks about like the difference between an adventurer and an explorer. I consider myself an adventurer. Like I walk trails that people have walked before. I don't typically do too much stuff that's new, but it sounds like you maybe fit more into the explorer category, where a lot of the stuff you do, not many people have done before, or maybe it's just like an idea or you and a mate had, and you kind of just send it. Which this off-track mission, 600 kilometers, 30 days, sounds very much in that category. Yeah, would you identify as an adventurer versus an explorer? What do you reckon?
That's such an interesting question that I've never really thought about. I feel like they're sort of inextricably linked to me. And, I guess with your definition of the word, I would have started out as an adventurer, just day hikes, and then, might try an overnighter. And that's how it starts. Hey, you just go on YouTube, do a couple gear reviews, get some secondhand gear and make it happen. Like a lot of people seem to think that there's this massive monumental leap between day hiking and multi-day hiking. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, I should have got into that like years ago. Like,
Yeah.
what was I waiting for? But I guess as I progress, I definitely am feeling more and more drawn to do things that light me up. And they just so happen to be some things that, people may have done, but I feel like I'm trying to bring like a new flavor to it. And
Yeah.
maybe that's something we could wrap up with a bit after about the sea level traversing and coasting. But yeah, this bushwalk, that was definitely new for me. I'd only ever done like a week-long bushwalk. And Leo, my mate, who I'll have to put you onto because you guys would just talk for days, he's got some epic stories for you.
Sounds great.
And this trip was his brainchild. Like he knows the Blue Mountains better than most. He's one of Australia's most experienced canyoners, constantly doing first ascents all around the country, New Zealand. And I'd bumped into him in the Bungles a month or so earlier, and he was in my ear. He's like, dude, SBT, Sydney Basin Traverse, going to be the sickest hike ever done. And like, he was going on about it. And he'd been wrecking it for like 2 years, like going out and piecing together all these different labyrinths and just, it wasn't a piece of art, the amount of preparation he put into this. Like he downloaded all the different Gaia maps, and almost all of it was off track. And so I don't know if people know about the Wallamine National Park.
I don't
going
know.
from I still have mixed feelings about that place. Like it is so stunning, but it ate us up and spat us out.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a day to get ready. Just wasn't prepared at all, and we got straight into this hike. We posted 3 different food drops, so it was essentially a week between each food drop, and straight into the Wallamine National Park. And I thought it was going to be like, like not too bad, but like we were going straight into doing like 10 to 12 kilometer days and hiking for 14 hours.
Wow.
And so like up and down, turn around, and like we had to take a 30-meter bit of, I think it was 8 mil canyoning rope, and we'd had these tiny lightweight slings. And so every now and then when we got cruxed out and we couldn't physically go any further, we're like wrapping off like tiny trees and abseiling down, and the most ghetto little harness setup you've seen, like really lightweight and minimalist. And mind you, like I'm carrying all my like camera gear, and we've got all this lightweight stuff, and it was next level. And on day 2 of the trip, we'd literally just gotten like 10 to 12 kilometers, got our ass whooped, really hot, no water in sight. So we've put our bags down for the day. I'm just about ready to drop. And then we had to go walk about looking for water. And 2 hours into it, we end up stumbling upon this farmer's property that had like a tip out the back of the property. And clearly all the people in the area dropped their rubbish off there. And we're literally like rummaging around this tip, like looking for anything. Like we just were so thirsty. And we see this like old bathtub, and it had like a tin sheet over the top. It had a sink in it. And we lifted up the sink, and it was like Coca-Colored, stained tannin water.
Lovely.
And we were all just like, yes, like,
Yeah.
oh, it was like the biggest relief. And so we filled up our drink bottles, and it looked like past, but we're like, what else do we, like, what other option do we have? Leo found a 600 ml bottle of unopened Franklin water that was like the holy water. And then we went back and and like boiled our water, and like, you know, like dressed our wounds. And I was like, all right, 28 days to go. And for the next 7 days in the Wallamire, it was like 14-hour days, covering between 10 to 15 kilometers a day, like pushing through kangaroo thorn, which is just like, and often it was like paired with this webbing of a bush. And so we're like, to be fair, like often Leo was at the front, like charging through this stuff, and I'm like trying to keep up with the camera, and Ed's taking turns. And we like, it literally is like compared to when you're like charging and like waist deep power, and there's someone at the front, like, you know, breaking trail. Like this is what we were doing day in, day out. And yeah, we'd get to the end of the day and like, again, like have to look for water. And the first 7 days of the trip, I was barely sleeping. I was cramping between 100 to 150 times per day, especially at night. I'd get into my sleeping bag at night, and I'd just seize up. Like I couldn't get up to take a piss.
Your body was like, what are you doing to me right now?
It literally was shutting down. Like I was peeing brown for pretty much a week straight.
Oh, dude,
cramping,
your kidneys are breaking down.
And the boys, yeah, and like I was trying a new diet as well. So instead of like having like a hearty like wrap or something in the middle of the day, we were essentially just snacking throughout the day. I think you'd be really interested in this style of nutrition, because even though it took a bit of an initial hump to get over, once I got used to it, it was awesome. Like you're not stopping and like preparing stuff. You're having high protein and high calorie bars and trail mix throughout the day, and then we're having D-high at the end of the day. And I think Leo's really onto a winner. And, you know, like we got to the end of each day and we'd pull out this like recovery protein powder, and it was just like, we'd always forget about it, and then we'd sit down so defeated, realizing that we're not going to get to his birthday on time, and it was just like never ending. And then we'd remember our little like recovery protein powder, and it would just make the day every day. So that was something that I'm going to do moving forward. But yeah, we limped into the first food drop after 8 days, and like I've been wearing the same Patagonia blue long sleeve shirt for like a year hitchhiking, and within a week in the Wallamire, the sleeves were ripped off, my pants were ripped to shreds, my soul was ripped to shreds, and I was just so ready for like a half decent meal. And we'd been talking about food for the last 3 days before we got to our food drop, and we're like, yeah, we'll all go around scabbing off people. And as soon as we got to the camp, the boys pulled the pin, and all of a sudden I'm by myself, and I left for half an hour, and I did a big lap around the campsite, just telling people stories and, you know, tugging on the heartstrings a little bit. And I just filled up like this Santa bag full of snacks and goodies. And I got a couple of beers for the boys and took them back over. And we were just literally like kids on Christmas. Like it was the best feeling. Like you've probably got stories like that where you're just tonguing for a good feed. And people made us like these gourmet like meat wraps and like Leo had been talking about how much he was craving like a certain kind of beer, and it was like a dark ale or something weird like that. And we got to the campsite. These people invited us over for these lamb roasted wraps. They'd been like soft, like slow cooking all day long. And they're like, oh, by the way, we've got a home brew set up, and we've got this dark ale that I brewed at home. And we're like, what do you mean? And like, there's these 20 old boys, and Leo like was the first person to crack the keg, and he got his dark ale, and we were just like, oh, life, how good is it?
There's an art to it. A lot of the time when I'm through hiking, we'll get to some random campsite and there'll be people set up and they'll be cooking barbecues, and it's just like, all right, let's just go start a conversation and just weave into the conversation very casually how exhausted we are and how many hours we hiked today. And more often than not, they'll offer some hot food or whatever they've got going, and it's always very nice. And it sounded like you guys really needed that.
Yeah, you know the drill, mate. Like, you ask without asking.
Yeah. It's an art. It's a skill.
And there was a skill that I find, like that I got pretty dialed by the end of the hitchhiking. And at the end of the day, like one portion of the journey is that, like I would shout people like coffees and lunch and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what people value the most is someone that is going to give them their attention and have a good old yarn. And that's obviously not the case across the board. Like this one dude picked me up and I jumped in the car and I'm like, hey, go on, mate. And he just looks at me, death stares me with all his camo hunting gear on. And he's just like, spare me the small talk, mate. And then just cranks his hunting podcast. And I'm like, yeah, mate,
you know what?
by me.
But
generally speaking,
my dream. I'm such an introvert, and I know the drill as well. You get into a car with someone, you got to give them time of day and chat with them, especially like we hitchhiked a lot as a group when we're through hiking, especially in the US. And if you got the front seat, it's your job to have conversation. And quite often that was me. And it drained me, especially after like a big day of hiking. So if someone said, spare the small talk, I'd be like, thank you, let's drive.
Yeah, he ended up coming around. But yeah, so like we got to that checkpoint and like I felt like, okay, I'm on the back end of these like food issues. That next night I got my first proper night sleep and I was still so patchy. But I started getting a niggle in my Achilles, and for the next 9 days I had Achilles tendonitis.
Fun.
And keeping up with Drill Sergeant Leo for 9 days with Achilles tendonitis, like I was ready to uppercut him, even though I love that dude. But he was on a mission and it was fair. Like we had a deadline, but every step uphill, I was just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And then on top of that, I'm trying to like document the journey. And I'm like, sometimes like when we do have a break, I'm like getting the drone out and I just feel like I'm just not resting until we lay down in bed every night. And so, yeah, the Achilles tendonitis like absolutely spanked me. Definitely by the time we got through sort of like the Blue Mountains and got to our checkpoint at Katoomba at the 14-day mark, I think it was, I was pretty close to throwing in the towel. And that would have been like the first time pulling the pin on something like this. And yeah, it was tough. And I spoke to one of my mates, Chapo, and also Cass, a doctor, and they told me to just elevate my heel a little bit. So I chalked it up. I got like a little gel, and just by lifting it ever so slightly, about 10, 15 mil, a couple days later, it started dissipating. So it wasn't until the 19-day mark where I felt like the old Benny had come back. The first 19 days was just like, oh, like I honestly, well, like at times I wasn't even enjoying like the view. Like I'd get to the top, head in my hands, like this is like survival. Like just keep up with the boys, don't let them down. And then we'd still have these moments where you're like stumbling upon two red belly snakes making love, and we're like walking along these rivers with no one around, and one of the boys has chafe and he decides to get his gear off, and then before you know it, all three of us are just like walking naked along this river, just like having the best time. Like, and so having these like amazing moments and seeing this beautiful wildlife, like stumbling upon Wollemi Pines, going places where it genuinely feels like no one's been before.
Wow.
And then you pop out of the dense bush into a campsite that's just like absolutely trashed and there's rubbish everywhere and there's people blasting their music and you're just like, oh, it's such a stark contrast. You probably got that a bit over in America too, where you're just like increasingly dropping more and more into this Zen state and like really like quietening the internal radio and getting to know yourself and like, figuring out what you want to do in life. And then all of a sudden, like you're back to reality and everything just shifts.
I mean, it happens on almost every long trail that I do. Is you spend so much time out there, and you do get into this flow state where you've just thought about everything you could ever think about, and then it's just empty and it's peaceful, and then you have to go through a town to get food, and it's like, oh my god, there's people everywhere, and it just snaps you out of it. It's always a bit of a shock to the system, that's for sure. But then you go back into the bush, and it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like revitalizing in a way. Like you spend day after day with the same two people, and like we weren't seeing like signs of humans. Like, you know what I mean? The first 8 days we didn't see anyone.
So there was
and
no
we're, like,
tracks that you were following, pretty much.
Nah, there was like a couple like fire trails that we had to jump on to like link together sections, and there was one section of road walking that we did down near Mittagong to link up the Natai and the Moreton National Park. But other than that, it was pretty much off track. And
Wow.
there's like off track, and then there's like Leo's off track.
Mm-hmm.
Like he isn't going the path of least resistance. Like he's wanting to carve a trail through this place that is the most beautiful and is the most challenging. And ever since, he's been like, who's gonna replicate it? Who's gonna do it? And I don't know. Like I hope people do go out and do it, but I don't think it's the kind of hike that you would be able to walk that exact same route that we did, just because it's so dense. And yeah, it'd definitely be good to have some sort of like roping skills, because there's a couple abseils, there's free solo climbing, like there's so much on that hike. And essentially like you're just following the Sydney Basin, like the Great Dividing Range, from the top of the Wallamire, and you're following and you're seeing the land change and you're entering these different landscapes. And like the feeling to, pass through like multiple national parks in weeks is just like, it does something to you. Like it literally just like it rewires what you think you're capable of. Hey, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. And like you said, you're going places that no one has potentially ever stepped, which is just like, it's such a cool feeling. That would have been super powerful.
Yeah. And like Ed is another character that, like, like if Ed didn't come along on the trip, like I'm not sure I would have done it. He, like me at the time, was just like chasing the adventures, living on the poverty line, and convincing him to come get involved was awesome, because he was the stoic, level head that we needed. And Leo was that too. Yeah. And like Leo and I were like locking horns a little bit. He's like faster and I'm like slower.
Yeah.
And it was just, we're into one another, and Ed's kind of just like the moderator, and he barely complained the whole time. He like always stepped up and took his turn to charge through the scrub. On one instance, he actually he slipped and fell down this chasm, and literally like if there wasn't this like big chalk stone where he fell, it's like wow. Big drop, like no way surviving. And he like landed in this spot, and I heard a scream, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Like this was probably at like the two-thirds of the way across, and I saw where he was. I was just like, I feel like it would be less scary to like fall into a like a glacier with like like what are they called? Like with rope on. Like he just fell in this spot and he just shook it off, and I was like, all right, boys, let's switch on a bit, and because there was like just so many times along that journey where you're absolutely cooked, and you're like, and we're running behind on schedule, and we don't know where water is, and it was really dry. And Leo's like, oh, like I've got this like map from like the 80s, this old bushwalker that drew like this little like map that maybe there's like water like somewhere around here. And we're like, dude, like please, like we're just like putting all our faith in Leo, like find us water.
Yeah.
Like it felt like at points it's like getting close to like if we don't find water in the next day or like 48 hours, like we're just gonna have to pull up stumps and get rescued. There was plenty of that. It was really hot and yeah, just relentless, absolutely relentless. And so we ended up getting down into the Nadai, worked our way along the river, camping in the most beautiful spots that you can just tell no one's camped there before, like seeing
That's the best.
goannas, seeing snakes, just Leo had his film camera, just really, like capturing some cool moments. And then we got to the Budawangs, which was unbelievable, and made our way through there, spent a few days in the Budawangs, and we'd arranged for someone to come up on the final day of the trip and bring us some goodies. And because it was going to be Leo's birthday on the summit of the castle, our friend Lily, she hiked up, I think, a cake, and everyone put in an order what they wanted. And so we got to the summit, and we all raced to the top of the summit, and we're like, all right, let's see who gets to the top first. And we're like Leo and I are just giving it absolutely everything. I'm like, I'm going to show this prick, and we're just going head and head all the way up to the top. And we get to a spot where you have to like climb up a rope, and I'm like, I think I've got him, like I'm just in front. And then I have to stop because these people are coming down the rope. And then all of a sudden he just like free solos up the rock wall next to me. And he just is like, and he gets up to the top and he looks at me. He's like, yeah, beat you by 40 seconds, Benny. And I'm like, oh, you're a funny dude, Leo. He's so funny. And so we got to the top and we were just like, bonded for life, like sharing that together. And some of the stuff that we experienced together, it just, I don't know, like you get to know people pretty quick out there. And the fact that Lily could come up and bring us all that stuff, it was the same day that the AFL grand final was on. So
Wow.
after just being like nonstop chatting with the crew for a month, I'm like, all right, catch you. I'm going to have a couple hours to myself. And I like walked off, found this beautiful view. I happened to get a couple bars of 4G on the top of the castle. And it was that year that Collingwood just won. It was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the best finals in years. And I'm just like, oh, how good. And got up that next morning, 80 plus kilometer per hour winds. And we'd been up before the sunrise every single day and been hiking pretty much either after the sun's gone or like so we were always like, up and at it and making the most of the day. And there wasn't a single colorful sunrise or sunset. The final morning of the trip on top of the Budawangs, we got just this crazy sunrise. And it was just like one of the most magical moments. And we're all just there getting blasted by the wind and just soaking it in.
Yeah. You're like, this is exactly where we're meant to be right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really special. And yeah, we got there just in time. And that kind of marked the end of that chapter of my life. And I got picked up by my old man. I literally didn't have a passport, birth certificate. I had suspended driver's license in like 3 different states. I couldn't get a driver's license. I was like full like into the wild spec. So I spent the next week established in society and getting like a driver's license and paying some of my fines and, assimilating back into normal life. And then before you knew it, like I was heading down to Tassie to, like really test myself properly on some solo adventures. So it just kept going. And I guess like that's where I feel like that second summer down in Tassie, because the first summer was a bit of a recce of sorts. Like, I'm hitchhiking around, dabbling, bit of highlining, some ultras and getting a feel for a place. But then the next summer, I'm like, okay, now I've got a vehicle for the first time in like a year and a half. I'm not in someone else's car. I'm the captain now. Like, let's go get it. And it was unreal. Like, it was just the space for 3 months. It was like, I'll send you a screenshot of the list of the missions we did, but it was just like back to back to back. And after that month-long bushwalk, I'm like, oh, like the groin is still not feeling good, but the hiking fitness is coming back. And I'm like,
Hmm.
maybe the Arthur's Traverse is on again. Like, I haven't run in 4 to 5 months. And I got down to Tassie and I'm like, I'm not willing to spend the next 3 months purely training just for an attempt on the Arthurs. But I decided to like just follow my nose and strategically kind of mapped adventures over the next few months that would incrementally get harder and harder and continue to build on the fitness that I'd got on the SBT. And so the first day of the new year, I went and ran Mount Anne in a day, and that was like my first run in, I don't know, 5 months or something. And I remember doing it like it's like an embarrassing time. I guess it's still good to get it done in a day, but it was like 14 to 16 hours or something. And I got back and I was like absolutely rocked. I'm like, I'm a shell of what I once was. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm not doing the Arthurs. Lining adventures. We rigged a couple of rope swings. Like, I was a part of a crew, happened to get the call up, and was a part of a team that rigged Australia's biggest rope swing.
Whoa.
And that was 150 meters high out at a secret location in Tasmania. And the biggest rope swing I'd done before was probably like a 30-meter free fall. And this one was building on the previous Australian record, which was just over 100 meters, and they jacked it up to 150 meters, and you're 300 meters above a watercourse below. And I don't even know how I managed to sort of weasel my way in on that trip, because all the crew there was like really experienced and they do rope swings in their sleep, but I kind of weaseled my way in as I do. And he's like up at night time, just like this Einstein figure with an Excel spreadsheet in his head of what we needed, because the gear and the logistics involved was the crux. Like, so much involved. And he was just like, everyone's like chilling at night time the day before the mish, and he's like walking around like Einstein, like a little bit manic, like, have you got that beaner? Like, and he's just running around like rounding up all this gear. And we get up there, rig the 500-meter high line, and then go to do like a bag drop to test it, and realize that if we jumped where we had originally planned to jump, we would hit a rock ledge below. And so we're like, it's off. Like, Chris Wallace got lowered down and recce'd it, and he's on the radio. He's like, yeah, no, it doesn't go. And we're all thinking, all right, well, we tried. Like, it was cool. It's still nice to be out here. And by the time he got hauled back up, because we rigged up like a hauling system, so we all, like 10 of us, just like hauling him back up. By the time he'd got back up to the top, he already had a contingency plan. He's like, right, we're just going to shuffle a few things around, and instead of jumping off the cliff, we're going to shuffle out to the middle of the high line and do like a big pendulum swing. And so the next morning, we had one day to do it. We had actually that afternoon, a couple of people jumped, and no one wanted to put their hand up to do it. Like, and I'm in a crew of about 12 people, most of them being some of the most out there inspiring people that I know. Like, this is one end of the spectrum. They're not all this gnarly, but Chris Wallace, for example, he's gotten hooks, got someone to slice incisions into his back, insert the anchors into his skin in his back behind the ligaments, attach that to a rope swing, and the only thing holding him to the rope swing is the rope that is hooked into his back.
What?
And then done a rope swing off his back. Like, if people are interested in that, it's pretty gnarly to watch. But there's a film by my mate Brendan Plaza called Hooked In on YouTube, and it tells that story. And so these people do a lot of interesting stuff.
That's next level, yeah. That's next
level.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the first stories I heard of this crew, and I'm like, I don't know if they're the bunch for me, but getting to meet them, like, they're unbelievable. And that next, yeah, like when it was time to decide, okay, who's jumping, like no one wanted to go. It literally just seemed like someone was going to get folded in half, and no one was keen. And then all of a sudden, Tom May puts his hand up and he's like, righto, I guess someone's got to do it. And the way it was set up, the rope is in the middle and then it kind of droops down and then hooks up here. And so you'd like shuffle out on the rope. You'd be on a pulley system. You'd tie yourself into the rope so no one could buddy check you. And then you'd wheel across a little bit. And then you'd just have to like free fall like a bungee from the middle of the line. And because he was the first person to do it, he went pretty much all the way right out to the middle, only like 5-10 meters from the center point. So when he fell, it was essentially like just a dead straight bungee jump, like over 100-meter free fall. And he just got folded. Like once he hit the bottom, he was like, we're free falling for like over 5 seconds and just like got mangled. And he just like took a second, and stoic Tom on the radio is like, yeah, no, all good, all good. And you could tell that was rough as guts. Then the next person to go, Jared, he'd broken his back a few months earlier. And he's like, yeah, I'm keen. And I'm like, oh, dude, you are the last person that should be going right now. And I was like, this is like arguably more sketchy than Tom going first. Like he's got a broken back that's still healing. And instead of going all the way out into the middle, he went about 50 meters back from the center point. So there was more of a pendulum.
Yeah.
And he dropped. And instead of it being really rough on the body, it was super smooth. And once we saw Jared go, then everyone was queuing up like, all right, let's do it. And we got through half the bunch on the first night. The second day, I realized that I was actually going to get an opportunity to do it. And I hadn't thought it was going to happen. So I'm like learning to tie a sheets bend for this first time in my life and realizing I've got to go out in the middle of the line. I've got to tie this knot. That isn't the easiest knot in the world. Like it's not crazy difficult, but you got one shot at it. And so I'm there tying it time and time again. And, every 3 or 4 attempts, I'm getting it wrong. And then I just did it till I couldn't get it wrong. And eventually they're like, righto, Benny, you're up. And I was like, righto, I guess we're doing it. And you go out into the middle and there's quite a process to even get into the position where you're ready to let go. Like you've got to pass this section. You've got to pull yourself out. You've got to get 150 meters rope, pull it through, drop it down next to you, and you're attached to a harness here. Then you've got to pull yourself up on the high line, unclip yourself, and then you have 150 meters of rope dropping down on one side of you, trying to pull you off, and then another 150 meters dropping on the other side of you. So you've got 300 meters weight of rope.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Trying to pull you off the line. And then you've got to like lower yourself, and then you're just hanging onto this high line.
Dude.
And you're looking down, and the rope is just dropping like 100 meters, probably like 80 to 100 meters down. And then it kind of spirals back up. And you're like, if I let go here, this rope is just going to tangle around me. And so finally, like it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't hold on any longer, and do a countdown. And it literally had like a bit of a suicide feel about it. Like it was so high and you're 300 meters above the water and just let go. And it just time just like slowed down. Hey, 5-second free fall. And I'm just like trying to like push the rope away from me. And then I like start like flipping upside down, have no idea where I am. And then all of a sudden it catches and it was smooth. And then I realized I'm alive. And then it was just like this guttural like scream, just ecstatic. And then a minute later, I stopped swinging and I'm on the radio and I just lost it. I just started crying. I was just like feeling so many emotions. But one of the key ones was gratitude, like, and also just being alive. But I was just like, I can't believe, like, I have a group of friends up there that have put trust in me. They've helped to rig this. They've let me come along. And then they've just been so nonchalant when I've said, yeah, I'm just going to tie this knot for the first time. She'll be right sort of thing. They just backed me. And I was just like, oh, like, it's so nice to have people that believe in me, because a lot of stuff I've done over the years, I get this like, you're crazy, you're going to die. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you've got these people that facilitate those kinds of experiences. It's pretty
It
special.
shows the power of how your life can change when you surround yourself with the right people. Whether it's 600 Ks, 30 days, hiking the Sydney Basin with two of these epic human beings, or joining this group of people highlining that the right people can bring the best out of you. And that has been the biggest shift in my life over the last 10 years or so, is changing the people I hang out with and intentionally finding the people who I know are going to lift me up and like you said, like back me in to do
Mm,
these things. Dude, that's freaking wild. I've done a lot of, like, I'm super into cliff jumping. I've done some rock climbing and mountaineering,
sick.
but what you're describing there, I will never do. I can confidently say that. That is just, I can barely listen to you talk about hanging off the edge and just letting go. But dude, power to you guys who are into that. That is what I have, a crazy
Mate,
fear of heights and stuff like that. And man, that's wild. I'm guessing you had your camera gear out on this rope swing. Like, are you posting all of this stuff somewhere? Because I don't think I've seen the Sydney Basin trip or the rope swing. Not that I've looked
no,
particularly hard for it, but I know you're lugging out all this gear onto these
yeah,
crazy trips, so you must have the footage. You're
mm,
putting the effort in.
yeah, yeah. It's a good point. And I've been in this position where for the last 3 years, I've essentially been like banking all this footage, like hitchhiking around Australia,
Right.
SBT, like all these adventures. And in the back of my mind, I feel like it's building towards like a series or something longer form.
Okay.
And I'm in two minds where I'm like, do I get the short term gratification and put out some reels and things like the rope swing? That's also something that's a bit, like controversial. And I'm not sure necessarily we need to put everything out in the world. And I know there's so much stuff that we've done that's never going to see the light of day because it might not necessarily set the best example. And some of the places that we go are very sensitive alpine environments, and we don't want every man and their dog up there because the environment isn't made for a million
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
that plays into it as well. But there's definitely a few things in the works that yeah, I'm keen to finally share because I feel like I've been so patient with it. But in terms of the rope swings, like I still feel fear. Like all the crew feels fear, and I think the difference is we just try to lean into it. And so many people I've met, they're like, "I'll never do a rope swing." And when you're in the right place around the right people, and it's a more beginner friendly one, I don't know. I reckon I might be able to twist your arm because it's
You
it's
have
one of those
to.
things where I'll send you a video that's I haven't released that's a nice beginner one down in Tassie,
Okay.
or even some ones in New South Wales where like that 30-meter mark and really nice catch and you can just get lowered off the line. There's no knots required. And I just need to say, like talking about rope swings now, like it'd be wrong of me to be advocating for them without saying that this isn't something that you go on YouTube and write how to do a rope swing. Like these people
Yeah.
have been rigging them for a decade plus. There's so many factors, there's so many variables. Please don't go out there and think that this is a good idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. You know, build the skill set.
Yeah. Sorry for the brief interruption there. We had some technical difficulties, which sometimes happens recording online and from different parts of the world. But we're back. You were just talking about how, yeah, doing these big rope swings is something to be taken relatively seriously, not for anyone to just go out and kind of send it without the required knowledge and experience. And yeah, you're also trying to convince me to get onto one at some point, which it may happen. You're probably going to have to convince my wife rather than me to actually let me go out there.
Yeah, I'm a pretty convincing person, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, like if people want to get into that sort of thing, it's pretty niche. I think wiggling your way into the Highline community is probably your best bet. And that's something that won't happen overnight. Like it's a very wholesome and welcoming community, but super niche. So start slacklining and then you can go to your local slackline meetup, or if you don't have one, when you're traveling around, you should be able to find one in most major cities, and then get into highlining. Before you know it, people are talking about doing things like that. But yeah, one step at a time, and highly recommend not skipping multiple steps and just going out and fully winging it. But yeah, like being conscious of your time, because I feel like we could talk all day, but we've been going for like over 2 hours, which might be a new record for you,
I
Cam.
think it
Is that
might be, man. Which I'm loving every second of
okay? Well, just getting started too.
it. We could talk, man. I could talk all day with people who are as into the outdoors as you are with this many, epic adventures under their belt. So, yeah, we'll probably wrap it up soon, so we're not here all bloody night. But,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
this has
Keep it rolling,
been
eh?
great. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it too. So yeah, that summer down in Tassie, it felt like the first time in my life where I had the confidence, started having the skill set, and then also had the friends that could help stuff happen. So it
hmm
took 29 to 30 years for the stars to align. It's not something that just happens overnight. Like really getting runs on the board and finally getting down there with my own wheels. And I was just like a kid in the candy store. And it was just mission after mission after mission. And it couldn't have gone much better, really. Like I'm content if that's the best summer of my life, It actually, getting too far ahead of myself, but it put me off adventures for over a year. Like I proper burnt the candle at both ends.
yeah. Wow.
But
Tassie's
after
a bit like that. It's just a hub for adventure, isn't it? Like out of
yeah,
everywhere in Australia, it's just there's so much woodness and a lot of it's just so untouched. And I keep coming back to that beautiful island, and
yeah.
I have barely scratched the surface of tracks to walk, let alone all these other crazy things.
Yeah, well, I can steer you onto a couple more, and I'm really hoping to end with enticing you to try this new style of adventure that I alluded to at the start. But
Yeah,
first, the Arthurs. So that was something that had been on my mind for over a year. I attempted Fed Peak in a day the year before, got it done in like 17 hours, sort of limped across the line, very little training. And then I was going to sink the next year into training. 3 months into it, got injured, spent the next 4 or 5 months not running, did the SBT, and that made me think, oh, hold on a second. Maybe you do have it in the tank if you just hang in there. And so really started getting a few runs on the board down in Tassie and incrementally getting harder and harder. And as I was saying before, training wasn't running. Like I wasn't running at all. My groin was still cooked. And the Arthurs isn't somewhere you can properly run to. Oh, hold on a sec. Someone's honking the horn at me.
go check it out.
Give me 2 secs. Van life. Some dude honking at me, telling me to get a move on. He's going to give me a bit longer. So, yeah, anyways,
I love it.
I started really getting confident that I might be able to get it done. And for anyone that doesn't know the Arthurs down in the
Yeah, give us
southwest,
some
they've
context on
probably
the Arthurs because
yeah,
I've
because it's
done the
probably
Western Arthurs. It's hectic.
yeah. So the Western Arthurs is arguably one of the most infamous tracks, multi-day tracks in Australia, and most beautiful. Typically,
hmm
people would do it anywhere between, I don't know, 4 to 7 days. I think it's, if you do the Moraine K loop, it might be around that 60 to 70K mark, but we're talking
That's
like
right. Yeah,
3,000 meters of up and down. And it's just like, it looks more like New Zealand than Australia. It's pretty challenging terrain. It's phenomenal. Like, it is beautiful. It
it's
gets
very
more
picturesque. Yeah.
rescues. I think the only other place in Tasmania that gets more rescues is in Freycinet up on Mount Amos. But other than that, you have a lot of people going out and wanting to get their selfie shot at Oberon Lake and getting caught out because it
Yeah.
can snow any day of the year. It's not to be taken lightly. And for me, getting the Western Arthurs section done, the Moraine K, like that in of itself was like, if I can do that once in my life, like I'm going to be pretty stoked on that. And it's sort of a similar day out to Fed Peak in a day, I reckon. But then what other people do, they link up the Eastern Arthurs, which is the Federation Peak section,
Hmm.
and push across and do the Western Arthurs in one big traverse. And that can take anywhere between, like, you are absolutely hoofing it if you can do it in a week, but people are often doing it in 10 to 14 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about 5,000 meters of ascent. And now that there's a road closure, it's around 95 kilometers, which doesn't sound
Hmm.
like a lot, but it's just relentless. Like, a lot of
You're not
mud,
walking
a
fast.
lot.
Yeah.
You're not walking fast, and there's some really dodgy terrain. And so, yeah, I'd been eyeing it off, and I had a bit of a vision to have a crack and try to do it in one push. I'd never pushed through for longer than 24 hours. I was kind of like wanting to see what was in the tank, and I'd heard that someone else was really keen to try to be the first person to do it as well. And it turns out the girl that I was hitchhiking with a year previous after Federation Peak, so I finished Fed Peak, I hitchhiked out of there, and I got in the car with another girl. Her partner, Ben Armstrong, he wanted to be the first person to do it. And I'm like, this Ben wants to be the first person to do it as well. And so he lives down in Tassie, absolute weapon. He actually got the North Face Adventure Grant a little while ago and made a
Wow.
film skiing down the Coolah on Federation Peak, and he made this home video about doing that. So yeah, Ben Armstrong on YouTube if you want some inspo down in Tassie. And he trained all year for it and actually went out and did the first full Arthur's Traverse, I think in December. And I think he got it done in about 31 hours, and he knows the place like the back of his
Wow.
hand, and incredible. And I was like, he just flies under the radar. For me, like, that was one of the coolest things I'd seen in the trail running community in recent memory. Like, you got people that go out and do like the backyard ultras that just blow my mind. That's another completely different realm. But to go out and do the Arthurs in a single push, for me, it felt like the next sort of big step in Tassie trail running. And like Benny Armstrong, absolute legend. And he did it, and I happened to bump into him a couple days before I was planning on going out to attempt it. And I went into Find Your Feet, who was sort of hooking me up with some gear at the time, and he just like gave me some good beta. Like, and it just goes to show what the adventure community is like. Like, he's set the FA, like the fastest known time, and I'm about to go out there and have a crack at it, and he's like giving me the
Yeah.
weapons to go and beat his time. Like,
Hmm.
that's Tassie for you, and a lot of Australia really. So
Yeah.
big shout out to Benny for, passing some of that knowledge on, because if he didn't, I'd good chance I'd still be out there, I reckon. And yeah, so he did it from the east to the west, and I wanted to attempt it from the west to east. And a couple of mates of mine had never really done trail running. They're arborists, absolute goers, and I convinced them to come out and do the Western Arthurs section with me. And I'd never run with them, but I've seen them climb a tree. I've seen them try highlining, and they're just goers. And I'm like, boys, come out, do it with me, and then you guys can do the Moraine K loop in a day, and I'll head off into the night. And that's what we did. We got up at 4 a.m. and that was my first time doing like a proper day out trail running with company. And I actually had such a good time. Like, often I'm in the pain cave, like in my own head, like riding that roller coaster. And we had such an awesome time. The Homer boys, Jack and Max, didn't complain the whole time. Jack had a bung knee. They ended up getting the Western Arthurs done in like 20 hours. And that's their first like proper trail run. Like, people don't do
What?
that. Pretty
That's wild.
impressive. And when we parted ways, it was probably like the 14-hour mark, and the sun was about to set, and I was about to go through one of the cruxes of the trip, which is sort of, instead of bailing off the Moraine K, you start going east, and you go through a section that gets a bit off track. And I stumbled into a ranger, and they're like, yeah, nah, this is how you do it. And I'm like, I looked at him and I'm like, I don't know about you, to be honest. And so I just followed my gut and intuition. And instead of going one way, I went the other way and got through that section so much quicker. than I would otherwise if I listened to them, because I found out after the fact that's where people really get held up. I'm not going to go telling you
Oh,
the rate because I
right.
don't remember, but yeah. And so for that evening and into the night, it was like no track, cans stacked up, and like every 20 to 50 meters, you're seeing a pile of rocks stacked up. That's like, this is the way. And every time I saw one, I was like, yes. And that went on through the first half of the night. I got to the 20-hour mark and I was, around the halfway point, and I intentionally packed barely anything. I took a fire blanket. I didn't take a sleeping mat because I knew if I took some sort of sleeping mat, I would have been enticed to pull up stumps and have a rest. And the whole idea was to not sleep and push through the night. And I remember pulling up at the halfway mark as I'm starting to I think I was starting to climb back up onto the Eastern Arthurs, and climbing from west to east up the Eastern Arthurs, wouldn't recommend it when you're delirious. Like, it was hectic. Like, I don't know if you can call that a track. Like, there's definitely a defined track, but you're having to actually like rock climb up tree roots, and it gets hectic. And I
Dude.
was so cooked. It's almost 1,000 meters of vert in a few K. Like, it's full on. It took forever, and I was like halfway up, and I stopped for a second, and I intentionally didn't get comfortable. I got in a really uncomfortable position, and because I knew that I was fading, and I'm sitting there and I've took my GoPro, like I'm filming a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, sorry to just start to doze off, and I'm like whacking myself, and I'm like fully like about to just like crumble at the halfway point. And in the space of 5 minutes, I nearly fell asleep 3 times, and then I'm like having my last caffeine gel, and then put my shoes back on and got back into it and just kept pushing through the night. And when the sun came up, I started being able to see Fed Peak, and it sort of seemed like it was only like 10K as the crow flies, but you like wrap around and it just wasn't getting any closer, and it just turned into a death march. I remember I finally stumbled upon people for the first time in like 16 hours, and I'm probably at the 30-hour mark just when I'm getting to the base of Fed Peak. I'm probably three-quarters of the way into the journey, and I thought I was going okay. And then I started trying to string together a sentence, and I realized that intellectually, like, I wasn't there. And
You're a zombie. Yeah.
in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to summit Fed Peak. Benny didn't do that in his traverse, but it kind of just, it'd be cool, like just wrapping up that section, get up Fed Peak. And that was the plan. And so I started trying to get up it, and talking to this person at the base of it, I realized that I was not there. And I started like having mild hallucinations and climbing up Fed Peak. And I'd done it once before, not knowing. And so this time, second time around, like I just didn't know where I was. Like I didn't know whether I was Arthur or Martha. Got two-thirds of the way up, and I couldn't even find like that cruxy, like exposed scrambling section that people have fallen off and died at. And I was just like, well, I don't know where to go. And I was thinking, I was like about to start like free soloing up like slippery, wet rock, and just like had like this ego death moment where I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, just
Yeah.
get out of here. Like, it's not about Fed Peak. It's about getting to the finish line. So that was really important for me that I did, put my ego aside, because that had sort of, I think, subconsciously driven me a bit. Like, up until that point, I hadn't turned around on anything, and I was kind of like felt a little bit invincible. And, I was devastated at the time, but looking back, I have given myself a bit of a pat on the back. And I think that's important, like listening to your gut and realizing that there's always going to be a tomorrow to do these sort of things, even though this was always going to be like a one and done kind of mish. So, yeah, got back down. I remember getting down Moss Ridge, and because I'm in like a full lightweight trail running setup, in an hour from the top Birchervais Plateau down to the bottom in an hour after been going for like 32 hours. Definitely found another gear on that section, but by the time I got to the bottom, my knees started buckling, and then the hallucinations like really kicked in. Nearly stepped on a tiger snake, and then for the next 7 hours, everything that looked remotely like a snake, I was convinced there was a snake, and I was like starting to like proper like hallucinate and feeling like there were like entities trying to like take me off path and like, really
Dude,
trying
that's
to like limit
serious
my
sleep deprivation.
yeah, starting to like really wish it was over. And my phone had limited battery, so I was trying to like not get it out every 5 minutes so it lasted. And it meant that I had to like just trust my gut sometimes, and got off track a couple times. It got into the third night, so third section of darkness in the one sort of stint, and I got lost on Farmhouse Creek, probably a few k's from the end. And I was really starting to like feel like the panic arise, and just realized like, mate, put the FKT aside. Like for the middle section of it, once I bailed on the boys, I was thinking like, like I might actually have a good crack at this. But in hindsight, we did the Western Arthurs way too slow to have a good crack at that 31 hours. Like Benny's a mountain goat. But for the middle section, I was like going hard. Like I really wanted that in the back of my mind. It's just good to have a carrot dangled out in front of you.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're out there, like you just take anything to just keep you going. Like, and if it's sometimes the wrong reasons, like if it just keeps you taking step after step for a little moment in time, like, and that's what it did for the middle section. And then once I got to Fed Peak, I realized that's out the window. Got lost in Farmhouse Creek, and again just took some time to just like gather myself. And instead of like bush bashing, I just backtracked considerably further than I would have liked, just to make sure I was on the track, and found it. And yeah, kept pushing through and ended up getting to the creek at probably like the 37-ish hour mark, and still had 8Ks of uphill fire trails to go where the boys were going to pick me up, and they were going to call it in, the rescue, in about 6 hours time. So I was out there a little bit longer than I would have liked, but ended up getting back to them at probably like 39 hours, and it was 95-ish K, 5,000 meters of ascent, and got in the car, and I was just so like, I got the wave of froth. Like I was so stoked, and driving along with the boys, like recounting some of it. And all of a sudden, I'm like, we're driving in the shadows, and they're dodging so much wildlife. Like, yeah, if you're ever in Tassie, like, please be careful at nighttime. There's so much wildlife out there. Like, just ideally don't drive at nighttime. And we're driving along, and I literally thought I saw thylacine, a Tassie tiger. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
reading all about them, and there's a whole debate: are they alive? Are they extinct? And I was like convinced, like, boys, like, look, thylacine. And we got up closer to it, and it was a rock. And I just looked at the boys, and I'm like, I need to go to sleep, don't I? And they just didn't even answer me. They just nodded their head, and yeah, hit the
Maybe
hay.
that's where
And
the myth of the thylacine has perpetrated from. It's just all these crazy Tassie trail runners who are completely delirious from sleep deprivation, seeing rocks, and we're like, I swear, I saw a Tassie tiger. They're out there. It's just rocks. It's rocks on the side of the road.
Mate, rocks in my brain at that point of the mission. But yeah,
Wild.
it was a good journey, and it kind of just really taught me that you don't necessarily need to do specific training for a mission. Like I felt like all those other adventures where I was like rock climbing, and I was traversing, and I was highlining, like that, getting my head ready, that felt just as important as going out and like running pre this trip. So hopefully that's
Well,
something
yeah.
people can take on board.
Yeah, that's what I've found with my hiking stuff is like the best training for a long hike is just doing lots of hiking, because it's just very specific, and it's also just it's easier to be consistent, and you enjoy the process a bit more. And so that's when people ask me all the time, how do you train for a through hike or whatnot? I'm like, I just hike a lot. That's pretty much all I do. Just lots of hiking, and it somehow makes me good at hiking. Funny that.
And you enjoy the process.
I love every second. Yeah, that's wild, dude. Like I said, I've done the Western Arthurs Traverse. I've done it a couple of times actually, but like, over 5 days or whatever. And it's a tough slog. And I've heard things about the Eastern Arthurs as well. And that's a good effort in 39 hours, mate. That is a very good effort, especially no sleep and everything you went through.
seeing what you did, I can't remember if it was a PCT or what, but I think you did like 160 plus K push, or like how many Ks did you do that day?
Uh, on the PCT, we did a 24-hour push, and we did
Yeah,
just
yeah,
under 130K.
that. Yeah, yeah. So I feel like you've got the dog in you to go out and do the
Yeah,
Arthurs, you know? Yeah, like the thing with the Arthurs, it's not really a run. Like you try to run when you can, but it's a hike. And although
yeah,
there is a couple section where you probably should know how to use a compass, like you can get away with, well, I got away. I don't know what, I can't speak for everyone else, but having Gaia and, like having a PLB and that sort of stuff. Like I reckon someone like you that
yeah.
has good hiking base could go out and just probably not get a heli rescue.
That's the key, isn't it? It's just actually making it out. I've always wanted to do the full traverse, whether that's over like a week or over a couple of days. I don't know, but it'll definitely happen at some point. It just sounds incredible, and I have to do Federation Peak at some point. For those who don't know, that's like just one of the most notorious mountains in Tassie. You know, super technical and yeah, quite dangerous, but just so epic. And I will be doing that at some point, hopefully next year or two.
Yes, yes. And on Federation Peak, if people are gonna listen to me, if there's one thing that I'd like to hear, like I'd like people to follow up on a suggestion. So my mate Andy Sloz, he made a film called Winter on the Blade. It's on Vimeo, and he pulled together a crew and they went out to Federation Peak in the middle of winter and attempted to be the first people to climb the longest route of rock climbing in Australia. And it's like 650 meter climb.
Whoa.
Sketchy enough in summer, but in winter when there's snow and rain, like, yeah, so that film will really paint a picture of what Tassie's like. They've got big, heavy packs, slogging it out through mud, and they go out and they've got a 3 week window. And let's just say they had to use the whole thing up. It's a sick film, Winter on the Blade.
Winter on the Blade. Wow. Yeah, I've got some watching to do after this chat.
Yeah, I'll send you a bit of a list. And I guess like one more quick one that would be cool to plant a seed about is, yeah. So after that trip, I thought like I'm going to be out of the game for a little while, and another window popped up to do a sea level traverse, and this is something that I alluded to at the start. I feel like for most of my life, I've kind of been like looking for something that has that multi-sport aspect to it and feels like fresh, and there's not really like a grading system. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure style of adventure. And some people call it sea level traversing, others call it coasting, poor man's alpinism, whatever you want to call it. But essentially you're going to stretches of coastline, typically ones that are treacherous and you got steep rocky cliff faces, and you're trying to make your way along the coastline by whatever means necessary, ideally spending as little time in the water as possible. So you're climbing and you're deep water soling with no rope. And then sometimes you get to a cave where you can't physically climb. So you've got to jump in the water, swim across through a seal colony, claw your way out, clawing onto
Yeah,
seaweed
right.
kelp, and then you're hiking and climbing, and it's just a combination of all the things I like to do. And the first couple of summers down in Tassie, I got a bit of a taste for it, and I did a couple the first summer, and then that second summer that I've just been talking about now, I hadn't done it for a year, but I'd sort of been building up some fitness, and I'm like, oh, I know the place. Like I know somewhere that I would love to get out to and try to do like an FA and put up a new one. And I don't know if people have heard of Cape Pillar, but it's a part of the Three Capes track out on the Tasman Peninsula. It's got the highest sea cliffs in the southern hemisphere, dolerite columns towering 290 meters up above Tasman Sea. It's crazy. Like that place keeps calling me back
Yeah,
time and
I've
time
never been
again.
out there, but man, it looks incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. You can do the Three Capes walk, or you can get in a Pennicott tour boat, and go out in a boat and check it out. I reckon hike out and see it that way. And so, yeah, the plan was to start at Fortescue Bay, which is really iconic. It's where you start to go out to like Cape Hoy and the Totem Pole, which is probably the most famous rock climb in Australia. Start at Fortescue Bay, get up at the crack of dawn, run the 18 kilometers out to Cape Pillar, go down this sketchy goat track below the tallest sea cliffs in the southern hemisphere, and then spend the day trying to traverse about 4 kilometers below the most scary coastline I've ever seen, and then shoot back up a goat track and then run the 25K back in and tag in Cape Hoy for fun. So that was the plan. And I was eyeing it off all summer. You got to get perfect conditions. So exposed down there. And I'd recently burst my eardrum, as I was saying. So when you burst your eardrum, you're not supposed to get it wet for 6 weeks. And this was probably a couple weeks after I burst my eardrum. The weather window popped up, and I was like, let's find out what happens when I get my ear wet. The doctors say not to. Let's see what the fuss is about. And so got up at 4, ran the 18Ks out. So sketchy getting down to the bottom. And essentially, I'm probably like 4 hours into the day when I get to the actual start line of the traverse. I climbed halfway up Cathedral Rock. And for me, that marks the start. And you cross this amazing little land bridge, and it's like a 40-meter stretch of rock that connects this sea stack to the mainland. And the waves were coming in and washing over it. And I feel like that's a really good gauge whether the swell is going to be too big to attempt this sea level traverse. Like, I'm skeptical to even talk about it because it really is a good way to die, going out and underestimating this place. Really have to stress that going into these environments, and if you have no idea about swell, tides, winds, go tick off the hazards in Freycinet first and get some runs on the board, because it's no joke. And so when I got there, the swell was a bit 50-50. I could cross the land bridge, but I had to time it between the sets, and it was forecasted to about 1 meter to 1.5 meters of swell, but it was a southerly swell. So I knew that once I wrapped around the first half of the traverse, the swell was going to pick up in like quite a bit. So I had to keep that in mind, and essentially spent the next 9 hours with my trail running vest on. I had my trail running shoes, I had my climbing shoes, and tried to spend as much time out of the water as possible, just like free soloing and deep water solo climbing on this beautiful dolerite rock, often really slippery. Sometimes you're like traversing along and you're like precariously stepping on these like tiny little seaweed, kelp, and if you fall, you're going to fall like 4 meters onto like a rock shelf. And one of the scariest things of the whole thing is you've got seal colonies pretty much the whole way around that 4 kilometer stretch of coastline. And so sometimes you're like climbing along, you're like, if I fall here, I'm dead. And then you've got a seal that just starts like bounding straight towards you, because the seals are phenomenal climbers. Like, they can get up really high and they just come out when you least expect it. So constantly trying to dodge seals. In the back of your mind, you're like, this is the sharkiest place I've ever been in my life. Like, one of my mates told me a story about a great white coming up and trailing someone in a sea kayak. He told me this the day before I went out there, and I'm like, why would you tell me that? Like, you're stirring me up. And like, this place is super exposed. And like down there, the first half of the day went quite well. Did a handful of swims, a lot of fun climbing, and you're like just looking up at these cliffs above you. It just felt so insignificant and exposed. And people are like sailing past and looking, and they're like looking at me like, oh wow, like, do you need to be rescued? And I'm like, international symbol of okay, like, nah, like, I'm here by choice sort of thing. Like, I love this stuff. And just cruising along the coastline. Every now and then you've got to jump in and do like a 50-meter breaststroke swim. Got a 5 kilo pack on. I wanted to do it fully unsupported, so I could have filled up 2/3 of the way out, but I carried 4 liters of water with me and PLB and all my snacks, and that was sort of important to me to do it unsupported, because I'm not a huge fan of how over the top the national parks have been with building all the infrastructure out on the Three Capes track. That's another story for another day, but it felt weird to have this bone or what to pick with national parks about overdoing it and then going out and because it's convenient filling my water bottle up there on a mission. So I wasn't having that, and got anyways halfway through this journey starting to like really shake because it's in March, and I was getting really cold and vulnerable and just starting to wonder like what I'm doing with my life.
Dude,
And then finding
you've had a
myself
few
in
of
these
those moments.
places, oh, just constant. Like I've never felt like a style of adventure requires me to be so on all day long. Like it wasn't like there was any one particular moment where I'm like, this is 50-50 whether I'm going to die. It's like it all felt manageable, but there's like hundreds of moments throughout the day where it could all be over. So, just like rock fall, like free soloing and falling 4, 5, 10 meters onto rocks below. A big one that people need to think about is like you're climbing along and you're like giving it your all and you're getting a forearm pump. You fall in the water and then often you don't know where you're going to get out. So that happened to me once. Like I climbed as far as I could. I was wrecked. I fell in and then I had to breaststroke for the next 100 meters. And by the time I wrapped around the point, the swell had significantly risen. And so before that, the swell was coming up and down a meter, maybe a meter and a half on the big sets. Once I got around the corner, the only place I could get out after a 10-minute doggy paddle, the swell was rising 3.5 meters. So you're down below a rock ledge, exhausted, thinking, okay, I've got max 3 attempts at this, and then I don't know, and so you're like, you shake it out. You're like, okay, I can't, I've got to get this first couple of attempts. The swell brings you up, and then you're like, no, not that attempt. The swell brings you up again, and then you're like reaching on, you're grabbing onto like these slippery seaweed curl, and then all the water drops out from below you, and you're just like dangling, and it's like a 4 meter drop to a rock ledge below, and then wait for the wave to come back up, and then when it gives you a bit more momentum, you like haul yourself up like a seal, and then I just like lay there like, this is not good. Like I should be training for this. Like this is a good way to go. But it always sort of just works out well, so far anyway. And essentially spent 9 hours hugging the coastline, feeling like everything was trying to claw me into the ocean. And those moments where you're just like shaking and questioning your life choices, yeah, like it makes me definitely reevaluate why I do it. But then they're always followed with these moments of ecstasy. And I realized like I'm out here doing this by myself because I want to be here. Like I want to see places people haven't experienced. Like it's one thing to go past in a boat, but to free solo through like caves and cracks that I know no one's been in and feel what no one's felt. Like there's something appealing about that. And what gets me really psyched is the fact that other people can potentially get inspired to go out and experience that same feeling. But then it comes with the grain of salt that it's a good place to die if you're not experienced. And I'm a bit reckless when I do it. I'm not going to lie. Like I don't train. I don't really invest a whole lot of time. I just trust that the time I've spent cliff jumping and snorkeling and trail running and climbing, that all that life experience is just going to be enough to get me across the line. So yeah, it's not for everyone, but you don't have to necessarily go to that nth degree and go to places that are going to kill you. Like there's so many awesome traverses in Tassie. Like if you go on the website, it's called the Savo. It's essentially like the crag for climbers, but it has a bunch of the sea level traverses in Tasmania, just the Savo. It's got a bunch of like ones that are rated and they've got like a 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. And essentially I've just going and been ticking off all the 3 star ones for endurance and 3 star for difficulty. And now it's at the point where I want to see how far I can take it. Like I've been doing these like random missions with no training, and for me, the next logical step feels like to do multi-day trips of this. Like people have done a lot of solo days. There has been a crew that put up the first and most iconic sea level traverse in Freycinet called the Hazards. That took them 2 days, but everyone does it in 1 day now. So for me, I want to see what can be done when you're going super lightweight and spending multiple days out there. So I experimented with that just recently, and I had a 600 gram sleeping setup. I had a 130 gram quarter, like a third size sleeping mat, 300 gram sleeping mat, fire blanket, trail running vest, couple of snacks, and did a 2 day traverse. And so essentially, like what I just told you, spending 8 to 12 hours traversing the coast, and then at the halfway point, filling up on fresh water. I got no sleep. I thought about pulling the pin and then backing it up and spending another 10 to 12 hours doing the exact same thing the next day in rain. And it's just like, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, it just feels like what my life has been trending towards. It's kind of like a culmination of all the things I like to do. And one final thing, if I'm not selling it, I feel like this will sell it, because the best part about it is it's a choose your own adventure style of journey. So you can go out with people with all different skill sets. And if you pick a traverse that is on the easier end of the spectrum, people that are more climbing orientated can spend as much time as they want out of the water and really pushing themselves climbing. But then people that aren't as competent with climbing can just get in the water and swim around the hard section. So I've done traverses where you've got people of all different skill levels, all having an epic time, all getting a completely different experience, but cohesively moving through difficult terrain together as a team. Can't beat it.
Dude, it sounds epic. I'm probably have to dip my toes in the world of this coast steering and sea level traversing. It's not something I've ever done before. I'm very much a land based adventurer, but it seems like you've nailed the hybrid approach of mixing the ocean and the coast and the land all together, which is super cool. And I think you're doing some of the stuff you're doing is going to be unattainable for some people, but I think doing crazy epic things can still inspire someone to do something that's crazy for them. It's all really contextual, and I think it's pretty amazing what you're doing. And like it's the same for me. I know not everyone's going to walk across the country, but if someone watches my content and is like, well, maybe I can go for my first hike, and start the process, then I think that's mission accomplished. And I think like you're saying, you're going to be happy to see people just going out on a really easy hike or a really easy sea level traverse, even though you're doing all of this crazy advanced stuff. And that's what we're here to do, man, is get people outside. So, mate, keep doing what you're doing. It's really inspiring.
No, I appreciate that. And I feel like we're on sort of the same wavelength with some of the intrinsic stuff that drives us. Like it really, like when I'm out there, it often doesn't feel like I'm doing this for me. Like this is like, ego, ego, ego. It's like sometimes like I think about if I push through now, and like like that genuinely might like empower other people to go out and get into it. And what an inspiring thing to do. Like I feel like so many people have inspired me to get outdoors, and then to encourage people to reevaluate the way they look at adventure. And Bo Miles is a really good example of that. Like you don't necessarily need to go and sign up for your 17th marathon if it's not tickling your fancy anymore. Like you can run out your front door and have such a more enriched experience making up your own little adventure and throwing in a few curveballs than you would by going and running the same track you've done a million times. And final thing on that, like of that entire summer, the dozen adventures I did, the scariest thing that I did the entire time, once this had all wrapped up, I went and did a 10-day silent meditation retreat called Vipassana. And I've constantly been going my whole life. So to then do the opposite and sit with my thoughts for 10 hours a day and really, really get to know myself and have a good cold hard look in the mirror, no distractions, no stimulation. Like to me, like that, getting through that was the thing that I was most proud of. And so often the things that scare us the most, they mightn't necessarily be the most glamorous things, but really questioning why you're scared of that and then leaning into it, because there's so much that can be gained from the other side of fear, as cliche as that sounds. I guess I could just throw in, like, yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been unreal. I feel like I could talk to you all day. If people want to check out some of the films I've been working on, I haven't even scratched the surface on that. That's what chews up most of my time. Go and check out my Instagram. It's just Ben underscore there done that 94. Been there, done that. And I'm working on a couple of films, one in particular to do with accessing the outdoors in Australia. That's a really controversial thing at the moment. And I hope to give the microphone to the right people that can put the best foot forward for the adventure community and just the broader community in general.
Unreal. Dude, I'll leave all the links to your socials below so people can find you. But, dude, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing some crazy adventures. You've actually inspired me to, I think tomorrow I'm going on this 4-day hike here in Japan. I'm going to try and hitchhike tomorrow to get to the trailhead. That's what I've taken away from this. I'm like, I need a hitchhike in Japan at least once in my life. I've done it in a few other countries,
Yes.
and you've inspired me to do that, plus a multitude of other things. So, dude, thanks for your time, and yeah, we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Cam. You're a legend. Have a good one, mate.
Thanks, man. If you guys enjoyed this episode of the Life Outside podcast, make sure to follow wherever you're listening and rate us 5 stars as well. We really appreciate all the support, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.
Catch you, mate.